Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tailosive Tech live on YouTube. I hope you're having a fantastic Tuesday. We got some spicier new news surrounding iOS 17. I'm glad to see Marngel, Katrina, Mark, Jerry Wong. Thank you all for joining in the chat already. And for, wow, 50 people voted just before we went live. That's cool. Good morning. Good morning. Yes. Essentially, Mark Gurman, who's been, I think, on a bit of a winning streak as of lately. He's definitely not flawless, and he gets certain things wrong, but as of lately, he's gotten a lot more stuff accurate. And he said that he's keeping things, of course, very, very vague. iOS typically doesn't get any features or rumors, like, leaked by any means. Because it's software development, it doesn't have to be, outsourced like CAD files are outsourced to manufacturers to make cases and stuff. So iPhones are pretty easy to leak, but software features are pretty easy to keep internal. And he's saying that at first iOS 17 was meant to just be focused as a stability update, kind of like how iOS 12 was, because, iOS 16 brought the lock screen changes, which I guess is pretty major, and a bunch of other stuff, but mostly it killed off support of the A10 chip devices. And because of that, because it killed off a pretty big chunk of iPhones, I think that's why a lot of people are expecting iOS 17 to be still supporting all of the same devices that run iOS 16, but just kind of stabilize them, be more of like a get rid of the bugs, patch all of the errors and that kind of thing. And I think that Mark Gurman's most recent report is pointing to the idea that, yeah, they wanted it to be more of a stability update, but last second they decided to finally add some features that people have been asking for a while. So this part of the report, honestly, is somewhat believable to me because I could envision Apple doing a stability update kind of like iOS 12, where they just try to make apps reliable and they just try to make the phones on the older hardware, like my iPhone 10 with the A11 chip, just like make it stable, just make it consistent. Honestly, oh, that's true. Thank you, Robert, for mentioning iOS 16 killed A10 and A9 devices all at the same time, which was why it was cutting off quite a bit. That's why seems like the chat mostly agrees with me as well. Most people are thinking the iPhone 10 will get iOS 17. But maybe after focusing all on the stability and the reliability of everything, they decided that, well, actually this iOS 17 is pretty light on features. Honestly, I felt like iOS 12 was pretty light on features, but ultimately, I don't think that many people minded it, but maybe the marketing department maybe was communicating with the software department, because Apple basically has the, best marketing department in the world. They get that better than anybody, and I think there's a lot of cross-communication typically that goes on between software development, hardware development, and the marketing department so that everybody's on the same page. And they probably realized that, okay, iOS 17 is going to be a really, really light year, but we've got to release this. At least we've got to release the developer betas in June, early June. So we want this to be a bit more of a noticeable improvement. So what's on the decision board of like things to add to iOS? Sometimes they wait to add certain things, and sometimes they push them off. And they were probably debating what's something that we could add that isn't too complicated. At least that's how I speculated on it. The report says that iOS 17 is going to add some features that have been highly requested for a while. But the way I envision that is, okay, iOS 17 is likely still going to support all of the devices on iOS 16, so they can't get too crazy with these top requested features, because, again, they still have to optimize it on an A11 chip, and probably even the iPhone 8 and stuff like that. So if it's that far back, you can't really add anything too crazy that's too like neural core intensive or too machine learning dependent and that kind of thing. So that's why my go-to guess, that I could be totally wrong on, I don't have sources or anything, but all I'm suggesting is it is perhaps, I think home screen changes are always at the top of people's requested features. So that's what I immediately thought of was, okay, people have been asking for, for a long time we wanted widgets, and Apple finally caved and gave us that. They caved and gave us the updated volume indicator design. So I was trying to think of something simple that could be added quickly that wouldn't be too complicated, wouldn't be very computational intensive. So to me, what I think would make a lot of sense for iOS 17 is finally letting people organize the home screen any way they want to, so that the apps aren't stuck going left to right and starting from the top. If they actually let you put the apps anywhere on the screen, which I think a lot of us would say that was one of the most top requested features. It still comes up in often internet discussions about Android versus iOS. I still people saying, Apple doesn't let me put the apps on my home screen the way they want to. And the thing is, while Apple may like that feature for the sake of, well, it keeps iOS consistent and that's what people are used to, using the blank Siri shortcuts, people are already doing this. I've seen countless phones that put on the blank apps so that they can actually arrange their home screen with the apps more on the bottom, and the top part of the phone, the top part of the home screen is empty or just has their widgets or whatever. There's already people doing this, so to me, I wouldn't see this as a big departure to how iOS fundamentally works. So being able to arrange the home screen apps, very, very simple. I don't think that's GPU intensive at all. Of course, Androids from 12 years ago could do that. And I think it could easily fit the definition that Mark Gurman is pointing to. And it could easily come to all iPhones that are currently running iOS 16. And I feel like it's one of those very simple things they could add that everybody would almost immediately notice. You just jump on your home screen and the apps are no longer stuck at the top doing left to right. Now you can place them however you want. Jailbreak community's been able to do that for a long time. Very simple feature. Practically for the iOS dev team, it is like a checkbox. Do not require apps to go left to right. I feel like it would be super simple, but also something that everybody's been wanting for a long time. But other reason I wanted to do this video as a live stream was to get some of your guys' takes or predictions on what do you think one of those top requested features for iOS 17, what could it be? I hope Apple adds official app icon themes. I would love that. That's something people have been asking for a while, and they're kind of low-key doing through the Siri shortcuts. There's already people that make theme packs, but to me it's kind of like a pretty techie thing that you have to kind of know how to do in order to access it, and Apple is probably missing out on revenue, to be honest with you, by not being involved in the theme pack game. Just like how Apple makes a ton of revenue off of the iOS App Store, they could probably make a ton of revenue off of a custom theme pack store. Thank you, Chris, by the way, for 18 months of support. Hello, welcome back. He is one of the absolutely insane channel members that subscribe to Tailosive Tech Ultra. Way too many people signed up for that. I really didn't think anyone would, but thank you, Chris, for your support. Hasael says, here's a better idea. Remove all apps from the home screen and just use the app library. Well, you could do that now, but that's not going to help the Apple marketing team come up with more iOS 17 features. Zuma says, I honestly would have preferred stability and better optimization instead of new features. I feel like iOS is getting too bloated. It's interesting. I'm not denying that experience that you're describing, but iOS has been great for me. iOS 16.4, whatever, on my iPhone 10 has been very snappy. It's been very reliable. I haven't had apps crash. I haven't had bugs. It's just been great. It's so weird because I'm not denying your guys' experience. I just think it's fascinating how different our experiences are. Because I see Max Weinbach on Twitter and others saying the exact same thing. iOS is super buggy and it's not very stable. And I hate iOS because it's unreliable and stuff. And it is just going great. It is just going wonderfully on my end. So it's fascinating to me how different our experiences could be. I'm not saying you guys are wrong and I'm right. I'm just saying I'm not sharing that same experience, which is why I'm kind of I'm not saying you need to come up with super graphically intense new features, but I would appreciate some more customization options. From the beginning, I've tried to be pretty clear on this. Customization is not the top priority for me when it comes to software, but I don't think customization is the enemy. I think the beauty of software is when you get optimization, user-friendliness, and customization all right. If you can prioritize all those things and you have something that's customizable, optimized, and user-friendly, that's just freaking good software. I don't some people in the Apple sheep community I've seen are like against the concept of customization. They're just like, no, that would make iOS, too much like Android. It was just, that would make it different because it would be different from what I'm currently at. That would be bad, and I want it to be consistent, and I want it to stay the same. I'm more of the opinion of like, no, there's a right way to do customization, and there's a wrong way. And I tend to just think that Android is a bit more of a clunky implementation. It's not like anti-user friendly. It just doesn't. Anytime I use Android and download multiple third-party apps and I'm switching between apps and stuff, the biggest problem I have isn't the user friendliness, because I think Android's fairly self-explanatory. Maybe it's because I'm techie, but I think it's fairly intuitive, but it's not optimized. Like the user interface feels like conflicting with itself, because you'll have third-party app developers that are using UI elements that don't mesh well with the first-party apps. And typically with Android, you're getting one company build the hardware, another company building the operating system. Then you've got two app stores to work with, and you don't have this consistency. Whereas I feel like that's something that Apple really gets right with iOS and the App Store, is just this UI symmetry between third-party and first-party apps. And I think that there's a way to do better customization on iOS than what we currently have. And that's why I was very happy, and I welcomed the lock screen customization. I thought that was great. We've been asking for that for years, but I still want them to go a little bit further with it. Like, I still wish you could change these toggles at the bottom. It's so stupid to me that I can activate the camera like this, or I can activate the camera like this. There's like two ways to activate the camera, neither of which are double pressing the side button, which it's one feature I love from Android, by the way. This just activates Apple Pay. But I like there being a quick button command to activating the camera. Maybe that's what the mute ringer solid state button will do on the iPhone 15. But Stetson says some more widgets on the lock screen would be nice, maybe bumping up to 6 widgets. I think I could get on board with that, as well as bringing those widgets to the iPadOS lock screen, please. But also, for the home screen, you may notice this on my iPhone 10. I have no widgets, actually. I've tried several times to find ones I like, and I haven't been able to. Like, I think my problem with them is, for one, they're not interactive, which to me is a huge missed opportunity. I don't know if that's a battery life decision or a RAM decision, but being able to control my car, or to I don't know, have more buttons and toggles, like a now playing control center style widget that was just there so you could skip songs or pause them without actually having to open the app. That would be a widget I could see myself using. But I also think they're just too big. I feel like if we could get more widgets that were like the size of 2 apps instead of 4 or 9, that occupies 12 app spaces on the home screen. So I think there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it, and Apple tends to just be more of the, we'll do it later, but we'll get it right, opposed to Android, which is, we'll do it now, but we won't quite get the implementation right. Yes, I returned the Ceramic Series 5, Daniel, I'm sorry. I kind of explained in the Ceramic Series 5 versus Series 7 video why in more detail, but basically I decided that it wasn't responsible to pay money to downgrade. I will downgrade if I break even, like it didn't cost me anything to downgrade my desk, or I will downgrade if I can make money, but basically the way I priced it out, there was no way I could break even on downgrading to the Ceramic Series 5, because I knew it was going to require a battery replacement down the road, and I wasn't going to get that much for the Steel Series 7. So because I've seen how much I will influence a lot of my community, I didn't want to give I didn't want to set the standard or make people comfortable with the idea of paying extra money to get worse hardware. I was like, yeah, that's probably where I should draw the line. Let's reserve paying extra money for upgrades. You should only be departing of more of your hard-earned money if you're upgrading or getting something a little bit better. Let's see. Warnings that don't fill the whole screen. Yes, I'm still with you there, Indy. I'm still in total favor of the death of pop-ups. That's what I call those, by the way. The low battery warnings, or the Face ID animation and stuff, or the enter password and settings. That does not need to be a pop-up. Everything should just be a notification. Apple has so many ways to access the camera except for literally the quickest possible way to open it, which is double pressing a button without turning the screen. See, I'm willing to admit I think Android gets some things right. Apple Music on Android actually has a Now Playing widget. So that's a feature that you can have with Apple Music on Android, but you cannot have it on iOS. It's kind of weird. HomeKit widget on the lock screen would be very useful. Yes, exactly. If you could change those lights and stuff without actually having to open the Home app. To me, that's what most of the motivation to having a widget is to stuff a little few extra buttons that prevent you from having to open the app itself. Whereas Apple's view on widgets seems to just be pack in a little bit more information. They want it to be more informational, and I want it to be more interactive, I guess. That's where my fundamental differences reside in. Let's see. A subtle but refreshing change I would be interested in is if they make the app icons round rather than square, keep the same logos, but the shape would be really refreshing. Ooh, I don't know, man. That's something Apple's been very consistent about over the years. I'd be interested if they make the app icons round. So basically like watchOS. Maybe as a theme pack option, I might be open to it. But for default things, I think that when you get different sized app icons, you start to feel a bit more inconsistent with the UI elements, I guess. Plus, most of the app icons right now are probably not optimized to be circles. So, I don't know. Maybe I just need to see it in the right way. But, let's see. Would anyone prefer an iPad-style app switcher rather than the current iPhone one? Maybe just on Macs Plus phones, though? I felt like they used to have one, didn't they? Didn't there used to be a multitasking option where you'd swipe up and get multiple apps that you could see all at the same time? Yeah, I wouldn't. The current multitasking implementation is not super fancy, you know. I think it's probably good for one-handed use. Most of our phones are being used just with one hand at a time. But yeah, you're right. Maybe the idea of providing more. Actually, that's a really good idea, Sunny Patel, because Apple's having terrible sales right now with the 14 Plus, at least as far as we're aware. So maybe coming up with more software-style exclusives to the more plus-sized phones would help increase the sales. Like you can access a different multitasking animation if you have a 6.7-inch or 6.5-inch even. Do you think we'll ever see split screen on iOS? We've been asking for it for years. Maybe that's what Mark Gurman's referring to. I know the phones definitely have the RAM to do it. I don't think it's a question of RAM. Because a lot of these newer phones have the same amount of RAM or more than what my 12.9-inch iPad Pro has. And my 12.9-inch iPad Pro can run 3-4 apps simultaneously, all running at the same time. You know, so I don't think it's a RAM limitation. I think it's a UI decision. I've tried split screen multitasking on Android, and I've never been very impressed with it. I always find it's not just the screen size, but it's also the aspect ratio. You just can't get apps to look very good or very intuitive when they're split down the middle on a phone-size screen. So I kind of understand why they haven't done it, but you know, when they're running out of features and stuff, I mean, I could always just not activate it if I don't like it. You can't, I mean, it's not like it's impossible. Android phones have had split screen for years, but I just don't find it very intuitive. It's like you'll get half of one app where you can read, like, I don't know, one tweet at a time, but then when you bring up the keyboard, it completely covers the other app. So my solution is usually just you'd be better off swiping between apps like this. You know, because anytime you're interacting with the two apps, you're going to be covering up so much content when, you know, trying to use any kind of third-party or first-party app even with a screen space that small, even if it's on a Pro Max or whatever, it's still going to be like this awkward square ratio. And anytime you interact with it, you're going to start covering up the bottom app. So to me, I just say just switch back and forth like this. This multitasking like this is really easy. You just jump back and forth as needed. That's what I typically do if I'm in the middle of kind of doing two things on two apps at the same time. Vertically and portrait, oh man, that would just be so skinny. Android split screen app mode apparently only started getting popular with folding phones. I think Google reported a 500% increase in usage of split screen with folding users versus slab users. That's fair. Yeah, I feel like I definitely never see anyone in my personal life. I have a lot of friends and family members on Android. I've never seen any of them using split screen. I've heard about it online. I see people in the tech community say, I love the split screen feature on Android, but I've never seen it IRL. Aiden, I don't know how to pronounce that. Foti? Sorry if I'm mispronouncing. Thank you for the super chat. Which of your devices you use the most? Definitely phone, watch, and then MacBook. I would say that's kind of the holy trinity of my ecosystem. That's one of the reasons I haven't upgraded my AirPods Pro. It's still Gen 1 because AirPods Pro 2 are amazing, and that's probably one of the biggest Apple purchases I've made that I've kind of regretted returning. I almost had zero complaints with AirPods Pro 2. It was like practically a perfect product. They had lightning, but I can pretend it's not there because I can forgive that because not only does it let you support Qi charging, awesome, that's what I normally use, MagSafe charging, so it magnetically sticks to the magnet, but then they went double down on that with AirPods Pro 2, supported Apple Watch charging, which no one saw coming. Apple Watch charging, MagSafe charging, and Qi charging. There's 3 alternatives to Lightning built into that one product, and the price didn't go up, and the battery life got better, and they have volume controllers and stuff. So the sole reason I decided not to upgrade my AirPods Pro 2 is because, frankly, I just don't use AirPods very much. I guess I use them when I mow the lawn. I use them when we record our podcasts, but that's maximum like maybe 6 hours a week, which is not much. Basically, the AirPods go through one cycle, and that's usually, on 2 days out of the week I use my AirPods, and then the rest of the 5 days out of the week I'm not using them. I'll probably use them a lot more on my trips when I'm flying and stuff, and I want better noise cancellation. But that still, after there being times where I wanted to charge my phone and my AirPods on my MagSafe Duo, I was like, ooh, these AirPods don't support the Apple Watch charging. Dang. So yeah, I think my phone definitely gets the most amount of use just because it's always with me. It's my car key. I use it when I'm away from home. I use it when I'm not working. I use it when I'm working. It's just kind of the center of everything when it comes to the Apple ecosystem. And my watch is almost also always on me. I feel like the watch enhances the smartphone experience and allows you to not have to check it so consistently, and it makes you able to manage notifications a lot easier. Plus, I tend to track my sleep every other night with it. I ping my phone with it. I use it as a flashlight. It's just incredibly handy. Ever since the Apple Watch has been available, I've basically been wearing one, and I've just found it so useful. But then after that, as far as work utility functions go, yeah, I got to use my laptop for practically anything. Change your complete lifestyle so you can use the AirPods more. You're right, James. That's what I need to do. I see USB-C AirPods Max with a USB-C iPhone in my near future, but if it's not added, Apple will not get my money. That's fair enough. I feel like I probably would have kept AirPods Max if they had Type-C. I still didn't love the price, and I didn't love the case. There were still other problems I had with it, but Lightning was kind of like the killing blow that really solidified me saying, no, I can't recommend these. These aren't worth it. But if they at least had Type-C, I think I could get by with it. I think I could justify it, but yeah, that's Lightning on a pair of headphones that expensive, especially now knowing that it's very likely for Apple to switch to Type-C is like, dang. One thing about Android that I like is the universal back gesture. I wish iOS makes its back gesture work on all apps. I'd like that too, but I found it a little inconsistent on Android last time I tried it. There were certain times where hitting the back button or the swipe back button would close the app, and other times it would activate a menu button, and it wasn't always consistent, which is why I got kind of annoyed with it. You're not a music person? I love listening to music. It's just I'm not listening with my headphones. Maybe that's because of my lifestyle. I work from home and I live with my wife. So when we're listening to music, we're listening together, either off of the kitchen Google Home Max speaker, which I'm still using, by the way, all the way from 2017, Or honestly, the time I listen to music the most is in the car, and typically my wife is with me in the car. So that's my go-to for music listening. It's usually not just me in a pair of headphones. If I'm by myself, it's usually because I'm working, and if I'm working, I'm usually working on a video, in which case I need to listen to it, and I typically listen to it through the MacBook speakers. Or while I'm working, I'm watching a video, and when I mow the lawn, I typically am listening to podcasts. So I like listening to music, but the headphones are not usually what I'm wearing when I'm listening to music. Sound system in the car is great, by the way. If they fix anything on second-gen Maxes, it must be the case. It was the most controversial piece. I would hope so. One thing I like about Android is that I don't use it. I am so glad James is still here dropping his fire stand-up routine. I feel like James Sanders Cedarloff would be a great stand-up comedian. I would totally buy tickets to watch you do stand-up. Why was voice isolation wide spectrum only on FaceTime, Zoom, etc., and not phone calls until 16.4? Kind of weird. You know, Sonny, I didn't even know that, but now that you mention it, yeah, I agree. That is kind of weird. Almost as weird as the iPad not having optimized battery charging. What the heck? I don't like how Apple has 3 camera bumps on 1 bump. I've never really loved that camera design. Honestly, I've never been a fan of the bump, but I've just kind of accepted it because I've realized that there's just too many advantages to having a bump. I was actually thinking about this morning because I couldn't sleep. This is a sad peek into the Apple sheep life. So I couldn't sleep last night very well because sometimes, I don't know what it is with YouTube or brain or something. You suddenly get inspired, and I got like 50 video ideas in the middle of the night, and you're just like, oh God, I can't relax, I can't sleep, so I need to start writing some of these down. But I realized that Apple has almost zero motivation to shrink the camera bump. Okay? So for one, let's just acknowledge the obvious. The bigger the camera bump, usually the better the camera. You can capture more light with bigger lenses. You can fit bigger sensors with higher megapixel counts, like the 48 megapixel sensor, and I'm sure the camera bump will continue to grow bigger, and they'll probably eventually get to the point where the ultra-wide, the telescope, and the main lens all have 48 megapixels, and then after that, they'll probably want to go bigger. So, for one, camera features, which is increasingly like all Apple can talk about with iPhone upgrades because there's hardly anything else to talk about. So, camera bump gets bigger, camera gets better, there's more things to brag about, more reasons to convince you to buy a new iPhone. Reason 1, make the camera better. Reason 2, it makes all of the old cases incompatible. So even if Apple wants to continue using the same size chassis, same size display as the previous generation, when they make that bump bigger, now all of your old cases will not work on the new cases. People will be more inclined to pick up an Apple certified $50 case that's either leather, silicone, or clear, with the MagSafe support and everything. People are going to have to buy a new case with the new phone, and the margins on those cases are huge. Oh my God, I can't tell you, like, you ever curious why on Amazon you can find like almost identical iPhone cases that look just like Apple's for like a third the price? It's because Apple has massive margins on the accessories. So they convince you to not use your old case, and they convince you to buy a new case. So that camera bump may get bigger and bigger and bigger to the point that they have to start moving the MagSafe ring down further on the phone, which means older MagSafe accessories aren't going to work in the same place, so you got to make new MagSafe accessories for people to buy again. There's literally so many reasons to keep growing the size of the camera bump. Also, it's controversial. People joke about it. People make memes about it. Memes equal profit, if you've learned anything about Tesla and the Cybertruck. Horrible presentation. It got memed to death. There were so many Cybertruck memes. More internet traffic than any other vehicle, period. It's the most anticipated car of 2023. Like, the memes work. So Apple embraces the memes with the camera bumps. They increase the camera quality, and they increase the case sales. Just across the board, so many reasons to keep the camera bump. And I guess I've always just preferred the older fashioned designs where you just didn't have a camera bump and the camera was completely flush. And the phone could sit completely flush on a table. Now, even if you get a case, the camera bump is bigger and thicker than the case is, so it still wobbles. And that's pretty much the only reason why my best case compromise, because I think asking for Apple to remove the camera bump is impossible / unreasonable now. My go-to is do the Pixel 7, do the visor approach. That will eliminate the wobble. That will give you more volumetric space to put more lenses and bigger sensors. And you won't have to compete as much with the MagSafe ring. Pretty much you can't go too much further this way because of how MagSafe is positioned. You can't keep putting the camera further down, but you can keep putting it further across to the point where this whole top chunk of the back is just dedicated to cameras. You can do that. So I'm like, hey, might as well arrange it in a way that eliminates the wobble, and then I will basically live with it. What keeps you up at night? True. Apple's camera bump. Pretty much, yeah. No optimized battery charging on an iPad will always be the biggest mystery with Apple products. Well, it's not that big a mystery. The solution is Apple doesn't have an iPadOS team. I think that Apple changing the term from iOS to iPadOS was mostly just a marketing decision. They were like, well, there's some differences, there's some multitasking on this one and not this one. Therefore, let's call it something else. The people will love it because the iPad is unique and it's its own thing. And that way people don't think it's just a blown up iPhone anymore. Okay, so you brand it as iPadOS, but I think internally it was the exact same software team. All the exact same iOS people were just told, okay, now also work on iPadOS. But the iPhone just increasingly has gotten exponentially more popular in more markets, and they're constantly pushing iOS to do more and more things. That's why we're talking about iOS 17 top requested features, and people are like, I wanted to do this, and I want theme packs, and I want customization, and then other people are like, don't add any new features, just make it super stable, super reliable, just make it very stability focused and consistent, and bring it to old hardware. So you've got so much demand for all kinds of prioritization. I want new features, I want no new features. There's literally people asking that. And because the software team is so focused on the backwards compatibility and the neural net options for the iPhone, because still, as much as Timmy loves his services and his Ted Lasso, he still has to acknowledge that the iPhone is their bread and butter. So all of the software development at Apple is, like, I think for the most part spent on iOS. And because that has taken so much priority, iPadOS just gets pushed to the back as not that important because it's mostly for education and kids. But the hardware team is like, wow, we can slap an M1, slap an M2 chip in here, make it super powerful. Okay, throw in Thunderbolt. Yeah, hardware's great. But the software team, there isn't really a team designated to iPadOS. There's just a team focused on iOS, and that's always going to be the priority. So as long as there's features or stability or backwards compatibility optimization that the iOS team needs to work on, they will always be focusing on that before they focus on iPadOS, unless there's just a fundamental shift in the company, which I'm speculating a lot, so I could be way off, but I think the best case scenario would be for Apple to just hire a completely separate, independent iPadOS team that maybe isn't the same size or the same budget as iOS, but at least macOS, right? Like the same amount of people you have working on macOS. I feel like watchOS probably has way too many people working on it. There's a ton of software development going on and a bunch of emphasis into every tiny little nook and cranny of watchOS. They're like, we're going to round out the notifications of watchOS to be a bit more optimized and a bit more user-friendly. They're just making tiny incremental changes to watchOS, which I love and is great, but I feel like we've kind of hit the limit. We've kind of matured. We've kind of peaked out on what a watch can be. There's no camera for you to upgrade every year. So that's why I feel like watchOS probably gets more attention than it needs. iPadOS is in desperate need of attention, so I would love there to be a designated team that is just focused on iPadOS and nothing else. And then we could probably have basic features like optimized battery charging and that kind of thing. Let's see. I'm using the same case for my old 6S on my new SE. Well, it's nice when it works because the camera bump didn't change much on the SE. You know, it's still mostly in the same position and it's not too big. But on these newer phones, the Pros and Pro Maxes and soon the Ultras, yeah, that's when you don't have to make the bump that much bigger for the old case to no longer work. At least it doesn't even really matter if the case works or not. All that matters is that Apple gets to say in store, no, your old case won't work. As long as it's listed as not compatible with the new iPhone, then they've practically already made the sale. The iPad can't have iOS since it doesn't have a calculator app. That's right. Calculator app, that would be helpful, wouldn't it? I feel like iPadOS wish lists are dangerous. I feel like we should just probably give up on that. That's why my iPad is not on my desk anymore. It's kind of in the back. It's in the bottom shelf, not being used too much. But I think I've kind of caught up a little bit, so I'm gonna check out what some of our Tailosive Tech Pro members have asked us. Oh boy, we've got more. Hasael says, read on News Plus that Elon announced you'll only get a... Okay, that's a big subject. So sorry, Hasael. I'm gonna focus on the Apple questions first, and then maybe get into Twitter. Marngel says, since you are likely to use older tech for the foreseeable future, when do you think is the next time you'll buy a new Apple product besides for review purposes? I've been debating that a lot, actually. I'm really unsure when that's going to be. But I feel a little bit scared to announce this or say something about this, but it's not a confirmation or anything. It's just something I was thinking about last night when I couldn't sleep. I think I've thought of something that the iPhone could add that might make me upgrade from my iPhone 10. And this kind of ties into Margel's question. I think if they put a huge emphasis on the iPhone microphones, specifically for video, not just the mic when you're talking on the phone, but like, okay, the camera's already really good on the 14 Pro and 13 Pro. 15 Pro will probably be even better with an even bigger bump and all that. But if my phone could get to the point where the camera was on par, or even not even on par, but close to the same quality as my Blackmagic, and the microphone quality was so good that you could barely tell the difference between me using my Zoom microphone that I usually use for my tech videos and using the iPhone mic. If we got to that, and now my phone could replace my camera and my mic, that might just be enough to get me to upgrade. And I wouldn't really look at it as an upgrade. I'm not upgrading my phone, I'm downgrading my camera. Let's put it that way. I could sell off my microphone, sell off my camera, cover the price of the phone, and now my phone, because we're taking so many trips. We're taking so many long distance journeys this year where I'm going to be far away from home, and a lot of these trips we have to be packing really, really light because of how much extra they charge you for checking luggage, or there's, quick layovers where you don't have a lot of time to grab your luggage and make it to the next flight and stuff. So I'm not too interested in packing around my camera on all these trips, and I don't see this changing. Like, we're traveling a lot this year, and we'll probably travel even more next year. So the less I can pack, but still have a decent quality setup for me to record videos and post them on the go, basically, the more money we'll save on luggage transport costs, and also just time, just being able to throw my camera and microphone just in one pocket, and that's it. So people have always been asking for this for a long time, and that's why I didn't really have an answer, but I was like, maybe Apple's thought of something that I haven't, and that's why I've never publicly stated, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never publicly stated that I will not upgrade to the iPhone 15. I've said after the 14 Pro came out, I was like, I'm not going to preemptively decide anymore. I'm going to wait for the product to be announced, and I'm going to wait till I can try it out before I come up with a definitive answer. I'm not going to decide before the phone's even been unveiled. So I was constantly trying to think of, like, what could Apple add that would justify me upgrading? And basically what I did say was it would have to be something that fundamentally changes the way I use my phone. Right now, just refinement on how I currently use it as an occasional camera for occasional B-roll shots, and using it for social media, for texting, for FaceTime, and checking email and stuff. The iPhone 10 still works great at that, and I'm still using it quite a bit. Very responsive, very snappy, and I'm very happy with it, and I'm surprised how many people are having buggy problems with their iOS 16 currently. I'm on the public build and everything, and this has been totally fine for me. So I was like, the only way to get me to upgrade my phone is if you come up with some use case or some feature that would fundamentally change the way I use my phone. And for me, I guess a real step change improvement in microphone quality could probably tip me over the edge and say, okay, I don't need to use my Zoom mic anymore, and then I could just use the iPhone camera for recording all of my tech and EV videos, and it would be my webcam for live streaming, and it would be my mic. If we got it to cover all of those boxes to the point that I wouldn't need 2 tripods anymore and I wouldn't need to record. Plus, okay, another reason I would couple that with the 15 is the 15 is most likely going to have USB-C, and I would think that the Ultra would have Thunderbolt speeds, or at least USB 3.1 or whatever, faster import speeds. So even if the 14 Pro had an amazing microphone, it still has Lightning, and I'm sorry, like the amount of time it takes to airdrop the video file to the Mac is going to be a little bit annoying if I'm using it for work. I want to be able to import the footage very quickly. So if I had a USB-C port, I'm not saying that alone would replace it, but if I could replace the complexities of this Zoom and Blackmagic setup, maybe I would consider upgrading. But other than that, the closest thing I could think of that I would consider buying from Apple would be, I'm still very torn on AirPods Max. I love them and I hate them at the same time. The things it does well, it does amazingly well, and I love it. And the things it does terribly, it does really terribly. So if they could just fix AirPods Max a little bit, switch to Type-C, maybe improve the case a little bit, maybe improve the battery life a little bit, even a fairly high-priced AirPods Max I'd probably consider, just because of all the long flights we're going to be taking this year. So that's the only other thing I could realize. I've already agreed to myself and to my wife that I'm not planning on upgrading my Mac anytime soon. My MacBook Pro is plenty fast, and I haven't seen anything very game-changing about the M2 MacBooks, or nothing about the MacBook Airs look very exciting to me, or the Mac Studios or the Mac Pros or anything. I'm very happy with my current Mac. I have zero interest in upgrading my iPad, and I'm pretty happy with my AirPods currently. AirPods Pro 1 are not as good as AirPods Pro 2, but they get the job done and they work fine for me for as little as I use my headphones. Why not just a faster Lightning connector? Ask Apple, not me. Apple came up with a faster Lightning connector and they refused to use it for some reason. They have it. On the older iPad Pro my wife still uses, the 2017 iPad Pro, they came up with Lightning 3, which is still to this day faster than the 2023 iPhone 14 Lightning connector. It's 5 years old, 6 years old now? Jeez, 6 years old, and they came up with a faster version of Lightning and don't put it on anything other than that one iPad. It's ridiculous. I have no idea. I would be willing to defend Lightning a little bit more if Apple pushed a little bit harder for it. Like if they made Lightning bilateral so you could have Lightning on either side, or they created faster versions of Lightning. But they didn't. They just gave up on it and just continued to ship Lightning 2.0, which has USB 2 speeds, which are very slow. Even on 1 terabyte iPhones, they were so complacent with it, which is like, okay, you're forcing me to be a USB-C fan. There's no choice. I have to be a fan of USB-C because you're doing nothing with Lightning. If you did something with Lightning, maybe I would be more of a fan of it, but they didn't. Couldn't you just use a compact dedicated mic? I could, but it's still something else I have to pack, and I've also looked around at dedicated mics, and they're not, they don't sound as good, basically, as my Zoom. I'm not as picky with video quality, but I am a bit more picky with audio quality, and all of the iPhone microphones I've heard are not that great, basically. Maybe they'll get better if the iPhone has a USB-C connection and I can just do wired straight from the phone. I know there's already microphones with Lightning that do that, but I don't know. They just don't sound as good. And they take longer to set up because you got to pin them on something, or they're not the big gold bulky, they're not these big shotgun mics, which are very helpful because they're very directional, which means that when I'm on the go and I'm recording videos in random places, Usually I don't have a great sound environment if I'm on a trip or something. But the reason I use this shotgun mic, this I take with me on trips, is because it's so directional that even if you're in a super echoey with tons of reverb environment, this can isolate your voice fairly well. I know it's not perfect at it. There's been some videos I've made on trips where it's still kind of echoey, and people are like, this doesn't sound great. Trust me, it would sound way, way worse without this. And I checked. Like on my last trip to Florida, I didn't really have a good place to record because the whole apartment was just tile and floor. There was no like carpeted areas. There wasn't a good place to record audio-wise. And I listened to the audio was almost inaudible. Like you almost couldn't hear me from the iPhone mic. So that's why I pack this, because it's just so versatile and I can be in a really bad environment and still get really good sound quality out of it. And it's fairly simple to set up and stuff. But like, I guess I'm not looking for a third-party solution because I'm not looking for a more complicated setup. The motivation of the iPhone getting a better microphone is that it would be something I wouldn't have to charge. It means I don't need to record to an SD card. I don't have to plug something into the phone. I can just whip out the phone and start recording, and it sounds great. It looks great. That's when I would say, okay, this will actually save me steps, save me a process, save me time. An external iPhone mic doesn't really save me time. I might as well just record straight to this because that's going to sound way better than whatever I plug into the iPhone mic. So if I have to pack something anyway, I mean, this isn't that huge. It's not that big. But if I could skip the whole process of packing it entirely, yeah, that would be a pretty helpful feature. How often do I use the camera on my phone? Every day, occasionally. I wouldn't say every day. Honestly, I don't take a ton of pictures. I use it for B-roll when I'm recording a tech video or something, but a lot of the time it's just a quick little shot, which is why even though I'm using an iPhone from 2017, the B-roll still works for the videos. It's not a big deal. You happen to remember where you got that microphone? I want to upgrade my audios. Well, I bought this microphone like in 2016. There are way better microphones than this out there now, so I don't think you should necessarily just buy this one because it's the one I use, but it's called a Zoom H6 microphone. And I got the shotgun attachment specifically because of how it isolates your voice so well, which is why I use it, is because it's a quick and easy way to eliminate a bad audio environment. But I think there's way cheaper ones that are way better than that one now. So if I had to replace that mic because it broke or something, I wouldn't buy the same one again. What is the best way to sell an iPhone? Thinking about downgrading my 14 Pro Max to a 13 mini for the size. I prefer to sell locally, so I would use like Facebook Marketplace or that kind of thing. But I've heard a lot of people have good luck with eBay or Swappa. I haven't personally sold online like that. Okay, I know I say I see it, but there's already you already have 3 questions, so I got to refresh. I don't want to. I'm trying my best to give everyone a good answer, and the reason I'm being skeptical with some of these questions is I know that if I'm not careful, I'm going to take an hour to answer them. Oliver the Buy said, personal thoughts on what the Apple Watch Ultra 2nd Gen will be and if it will happen this year. So because we got such a huge Apple Watch upgrade last year with the introduction of the Ultra, we got the Series 8 and the SE2, I think this year is going to be fairly minor. Don't expect any massive changes. I think it's very possible that they just do a chip upgrade. And maybe one new health sensor. And I don't think it'll be a major one. Not like glucose monitoring, but it'll be like, I don't know, blood pressure monitoring that's now on the Series 9 and on the Apple Watch Ultra 2, and maybe some new color options. I think that they very bizarrely left out all colors from the Apple Watch Ultra. They totally can do different shades of titanium. I guess they just didn't feel like it. But a matte black version of the Apple Watch Ultra 2 would make a lot of sense in my head. So there's been very little rumors. There's been almost zero leaks or rumors about this year's generation Apple Watch. But if I had to guess as to what they're going to do, that would be it. There's been some long-term rumors about the Apple Watch switching to micro LED in like 2025. But we're talking 2023. That's like 2 generations from now. So that's a ways to go. But yeah, I think that the Apple Watch upgrades this year are going to be pretty minor. And probably the more exciting part about the Apple Watches this year is that I think there will be a new Ultra, and that will make the first gen Ultra cheaper. And it probably won't be very different. I think you'll be able to get the current Apple Watch Ultra for maybe $500 or less once the Ultra 2 comes out. That'll hurt the resale value of the current Ultras, and I think that is a much better deal. If you could get an Ultra for $500 or $400, and it's got that crazy battery life and that huge display and everything, that would be kind of awesome. I'm answering individuals' questions at first. I'll answer Hasael's all at once because he's asking so much. Asking this at midnight, I see. When do you think that... It wasn't midnight where I was, but... Moon River asks, when do I think that the HomePod with the screen is coming out this year, next decade? I kind of want one. I need your prediction so that I can sleep a bit better at night. So, I mean, I think I mentioned that in the video, but Quo is saying that the HomePod with the screen would come out first half of next year. And it would be like a 7-inch display, pretty small, kind of basic, and wouldn't really run iPadOS or anything, but it would run, I assume, like a limited version of tvOS or something. Maybe they have a custom version of HomePod OS that will have visuals and stuff. But I don't think we're going to see that this year. So hopefully that helps you sleep better at night. Joshua says, can we convince you to do a video with you wearing blue jeans and a gray turtleneck? Yes, you can. But I would need to find a gray. I hate turtlenecks and I don't want to wear one. But I'm wearing blue jeans as now. But that kind of ties into Hasael's question. Will Steve Jobs ever debut in a skit? Oh, I see. You're asking me to bring back someone from the dead. That should be very simple. I feel like Steve Jobs is harder to emulate. He's easy to quote, but he's not easy to emulate. His voice is not as mockable, I guess. He doesn't have an accent that's very specific. You know, it's like handing a glass of water to someone in hell. You know, I don't know. You just kind of talk with a slightly higher pitch, but my voice is kind of naturally low anyway, so... we're not perfect. You're holding it wrong. I don't know. It's harder to emulate. You know, you sound like 500 other people when you try to emulate Steve Jobs, which is why he probably won't appear in a skit. But if I can think of a funny and creative way to add him in there, I will. I'll put it that way. Okay, I'm going to ask the questions in the order you asked them, Hasael. Would you rather never get an iOS update ever again, but always use the newest iPhone hardware? Or never be able to upgrade your hardware, be stuck with the 10 forever, but have the smoothest running latest software? I think I would rather get newer hardware and never have an iOS update again, because I don't really have that many complaints with iOS software. It, like, for what I need my phone to do, it's kind of fine. I mean, it'd be nice to have a charge limiter and some theme packs or something, but for the most part, it works. I can download apps. I can use them. I guess that would become problematic if 50 years from now none of the apps work anymore, and then, okay, I guess I have to stick with my iPhone 10, but then Apple wouldn't service it after a certain amount of time, so I'd be screwed either way, in some way, shape, or form. But my gut hunch is that, for the most part, iOS is fine. I actually have some family members that are using iPhone 6s, so they're not getting the latest software support, but they still have a lot of apps that they need still working for them. So I'd be willing to try that. I'd be willing to use an older version of iOS for a long time just to see how long it lasts, I guess. But okay, now we're getting into more. Now we're getting into more of the Twitter questions. Hasael says, read on News Plus that Elon announced you'll only get a For You page and be able to vote on polls if you subscribe to Twitter Blue. I consider this Elon's first real major L since buying the company. I recently deactivated mine, and he is making it easier not to return. Thoughts on these changes? Yeah, it's complicated. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think a lot of Elon's ideas for Twitter have been very good, but he's also... he also knows how to run a business a lot better than I do, regardless of what I think of him. And I think a lot of his ideas are bad. And I complain about what they do on Teslas a lot over on the EV channel. But Tesla's extremely profitable. They're growing incredibly well. And they're on track to become the most valuable company in the world. And it's funny because I am fairly, not as engaged, but I'm fairly engaged in the tech community. And it appears that on my Tailosive Tech Twitter handle, which has a different algorithm and different people I follow and everything, there's mostly everyone complaining about Twitter. But then when I go over to my Tailosive EV Twitter, I have a different algorithm and a different For You page and a different group of people that are recommended. And there's just two totally different perspectives based on a lot of people that like Elon and a lot of people that don't like Elon. Elon knows how to run a hardware business, not necessarily a services business. The reason you know who Elon is because of his service business. X.com, Zip2, PayPal. That's the whole reason we know about SpaceX and Tesla. He got into the hardware business because he was so successful about his services business, which is why I don't agree with that, Katrina. I think you and me have disagreed on this exact point. But all I'm saying is you wouldn't know who Elon was if he was bad at running services businesses, because that's literally how he got rich in the first place, was services. But from what I've heard, the word on the street is from people that follow Twitter closely and people that work on Twitter, at Twitter. They're not a public company anymore, so we don't really know the financials of it. But from what I understand, they are on track to break even next quarter. Or if not next quarter, the quarter after that. Which means, for one, keep in mind, before Elon bought Twitter, they were not doing very well either. You may have liked the platform better, but they were not profitable. They were losing a lot of money, and the company was not doing inherently well. Now that Elon has taken over it, I think he's probably cut back on a ton of the expenses, and he has likely convinced, not me, but a ton of people to subscribe to Twitter Blue, and also a ton of people to subscribe to the business grade handle with the golden check mark. That costs a lot of money, by the way, to get that golden check mark. And even Tesla's competitor Lucid is paying for it. 9to5Mac, who I follow very closely, even they got the golden check mark. So I don't think it's a good idea to restrict the polls and the voting and stuff to just Twitter Blue people, but I understand the motivation behind it. It's just, it seems like Elon has a track record of doing what is usually good for the company, but controversial to the public. He has a good track record of that. Like SpaceX and Starlink has done that, results in a lot of great performance, but also very controversial, and a lot of people don't like it or are worried about it. Same thing with Tesla. They compromise on the product a lot, and they make the product worse, but it results in the company performing better. So it's kind of one of those situations where it's like, well, it's not up to me. I don't like the outcome, but it seems to be paying off. It seems like the traffic for Twitter has been still doing well. The advertisers have been coming back, and they've been making more subscription revenue. So how do you want to measure it? If you measure it as a success based on whether or not you like it, then I guess Twitter is not successful. But if you want to measure Twitter's success on revenue and profitability, they're probably more successful now than they ever have been, just based on the operating expenses going way down and the subscription revenue / advertiser revenue going way up. So he's persuaded a lot of people to switch to Mastodon. Mastodon has had a lot less growth since the original buyout. At first, they had a huge spike. Basically, no one knew what Mastodon was until Elon bought Twitter. And then after that, they kind of petered out, and they lost a lot of activity. So they're not really anywhere near the internet traffic that Twitter generates. There's still a huge chunk of Twitter that really has no idea what's going on, that are still just using it passively. I'm actually in favor. I like the idea of requiring verification to vote on polls. That way you don't get bots and duplicate accounts voting multiple times on the same poll. I've done a whole video on this very channel. I don't think verification should cost money. If you want to have a subscription that unlocks certain things, like it removes ads or enables you to make money off of Twitter, or it gives you priorities and replies, or pushes you in the algorithm more and more, I can understand that. YouTube has that. Most sites have a paid option to unlock more features. Twitter had that long before Elon did. I support that idea to have a more profitable business stream, but the idea of requiring verification for polls, okay, good, but requiring payment for verification, that's what I don't agree with. I think there is a very simple and streamlined way to verify an authenticated user without having to take a monthly fee from them every month. I don't think that, like, if someone has a government issued ID and they can prove they are who they say they are, you can submit that. Just like, I did the same thing with Tesla. Tesla doesn't charge me, but they needed to see my driver's license before I could take delivery of the car. So if I could just hold up my camera to my driver's license, just like the way the Apple Card does, just verify, okay, this person is who they say they are. This is not a copy account. This is not an alt account. It's not a duplicate account. Now we can let Drew vote on this poll because he's a verified user. Why does that one verification process require, how much would that be a year? My Mac has a calculator so I can figure that. Why should that one verification step that I'm going to have to do once, and that should last me for the life of the platform basically, cost me $84 a year? Just for that little... I don't even care about the check. I'm honestly kind of sick of the check mark stuff. I think people got way too hyped about, oh, my check mark, I want the check mark. And to me, that really quickly dissolved into a status thing. And a lot of people just wanting that status. Like, I want everyone on the platform to see that I am verified and I'm part of the exclusive club. I don't like that. I don't want the check. But just the ability to vote on polls by proving I am who I say I am. I got no problem with that, to make the polls more accurate. I think that's fine. So I don't like the way he's doing it, but he's run a much more profitable business than I have. So I guess that's why I'm kind of torn on it. Is like, okay, well, I support the free market. Twitter could have said no to the buyout. They didn't have to say yes. They chose to say yes. And Elon chose to offer to buy him out. He bought him. He's running it the way he wants. I don't like it, but I mean, I have probably 10 times more complaints with YouTube than I do Twitter, but I'm still using it. We're still here. You guys are still using it. We complain about YouTube all the time. Get rid of the dislike button. They changed it, make it harder to select the quality options. The copyright strikes, the copyright claim issues are so broken still. The bots on YouTube are still crazy. You still get those WhatsApp scams all the time. Or message me on Telegram. I don't use WhatsApp. I don't use Telegram, by the way. Recent valuation doesn't agree with you, Drew. Elon is torpedoing. How do you base that valuation? It's not a publicly traded company. I don't follow it super closely, but all I'm saying is Elon has a track record of taking very, very difficult circumstances and turning them into profitable businesses, which is why I think it's so fascinating to watch, even if I don't like the results. I got excited about Elon buying Twitter mostly because he talked about turning it into a YouTube alternative, which I hate YouTube for so many reasons. So I was like, I want YouTube to have an alternative. He talked about monetizing content and podcasts and posting more content there and making DMs more of a messaging platform competitor and just trying to make it into the super app. And I was like, yes. And everything he's done so far has not been really nothing revolving around what I was excited for it about. So if he started bringing some things to Twitter that he got me excited for, I would be more interested in it. But I'm sorry, I'm just not of the belief that, well, this platform is annoying, so I'm going to leave and go to other platform. Because I tried to do that years ago with Twitch, and it just doesn't work. You can't get people to move platforms, even when things get tough. YouTube had all kinds of problems, and I was really pushing Twitch. For 3 years, I tried to get people to move to Twitch because they did so many things better than YouTube did, and it was so much better for live streaming. It tried for years and years, and it didn't work. I barely got anybody over there. So even when times get tough, I feel like it's very hard to get people to move, which is why there's still so many people complaining about Twitter on Twitter. And that's why I've seen countless YouTube alternatives and Twitter alternatives. They start up and they're like, yeah, we're better. And then they go nowhere. They don't get anywhere close to the size, because what social media gets big is kind of random, and it's kind of crowd mentality. It's not based on logic. It's not really based on reason. It just happens to be where people are at the right place at the right time. So I don't really think even poor decision making by the company convinces that many people to leave. Which is why there's still a ton of people on YouTube, even though YouTube constantly makes mistakes and does stupid things. Um, I feel the same way about Twitter. They're going to keep making stupid decisions. It was determined by Elon he had a down round so employees could profit made on their vested shares in the future. Oh, there you go. I didn't know that it was based on Elon's determination, but it sounds like it's not really against Elon. He like intentionally had the valuation low so that the employees could profit more on their vested shares. That seems like just a reason to make that just seems like a reason to improve employee loyalty. That doesn't seem like Elon thinks Twitter is worth less now. Marine super chatted. Says Kick streaming is up and running. I don't know what that means, but is that a website or a YouTube alternative? Kick has the same friction problem. Yeah, I was gonna say I've tried to if that's another streaming platform or something. Again, moving people from popular apps is downright impossible, which is why when Elon was talking about building his own social media, I was saying from the beginning that you're not going to have much success by starting your own social media. You can't move people en masse off of social media sites. That's why Facebook bought Instagram, not created an Instagram clone. They probably tried and it didn't work, but that's why they can't make Facebook Messenger better and better to the point that people will leave WhatsApp. So that's why they bought WhatsApp. So I was like, if Elon wants to get into the social media space, you're going to have a lot more of a chance at succeeding by acquiring an existing one opposed to starting one from scratch. Katrina says, Facebook seems to be dying, though. It seems to be dying, and it's still the most popular social media site in the world. That's the funny thing. It's kind of the same logic people had on Netflix. It's like Netflix is losing subscribers and Facebook is losing activity, but it's still so far ahead that they could lose. Facebook could lose like 30% of their active users, and they would still be bigger than Twitter, and they would still be bigger than... Oh, they'd be so much bigger than Twitch. I think they'd still be bigger than YouTube. Facebook is huge. It's kind of insane how massive of a social media site it is. Very hard to get people to move. So yeah, I think it has kind of peaked. It has kind of reached its limit because they basically ran out of people with internet access. Facebook is at something like close to... I know they're over 2 billion active users. So at that point, you're kind of running out of human beings to reach. So naturally, there will be some people that don't keep using it, and then it goes down a bit. But even though it's going down, it's not like close to death. It doesn't mean it's like about to die. So that's why I think saying Facebook is dying is kind of like, well, I mean, I don't like it, and it's clearly not popular in the younger crowds, but it's much more popular in the older crowds. And frankly, there's a lot more older people than younger people just because they live longer. But the main problem for Facebook is that young people aren't signing up. Right, but that's why they bought Instagram. They bought the competition, which is why I kind of don't like Meta. But I think that kind of answers Hasael's question, basically. Why isn't the iMessage icon blue? It used to be on the Mac. So much bullying and drama versus green bubbles, only for Apple to not go all the way and match their blue bubbles with the app icon. I don't know. That's a good question. I think there's actually home screen colorfulness that iOS is going for. You know, not recently, but a couple years ago, the Apple Music icon used to be white, and then they changed it to red for no reason. I think it's simply because of how the default iOS home screen looks on boot up. They're trying to have an even distribution of colors. Notes is yellow. Maps is kind of green. But in a couple of years ago, they added a bit more purple and yellow to the Maps icon. Weather is blue. Photos is a flower. So you kind of got all the colors there. So I think that they're trying to... Safari is blue too. So I think they're trying to have a rich selection of colors when you first boot up that phone, which is why they may start to, randomly change colors of apps for no apparent reason. That's my best bet. I don't know the real reason. But yeah, I know people have been suggesting that for years. It's like, iMessage is mostly blue. The app should be blue. Okay, whatever makes you happy. I don't care. I think people put way too much thought into app icons. To me, that's evidence of a platform, an operating system being peaked or mature. Is like when you're complaining about the color of the launch button. Come on, like this isn't gonna change much. I use Twitch daily, but I prefer that you continue on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I still prefer Twitch, but most of my audience voted for me to keep being on YouTube, so that's why I'm here. You guys voted for it, so let's see. Elon is just dumb. I mean, it's meant as entertainment, not rigorous research, but it's fun debunking of Elon stands. Well, I complain about Elon all the time, but I don't think I also think it's kind of stupid and unrealistic to just say Elon is dumb when he's accomplished what he's accomplished and assembled the teams that he's achieved. He's probably changed our course of history and changed the world around us more so than probably anybody else I could think of in our lifetime. Changed the adoption of sustainable transport, changed satellite internet for good. Internet is basically access to internet is practically access to information and education, and the thousands of people that have not had access to internet that now have access to fast, reliable internet so that they can educate themselves and stay connected to their loved ones and learn more about the world. So much good has come from Starlink. Seriously, just think about Ukraine and how much Starlink has helped that. And genuinely, I believe that Starlink would not exist if it weren't for Elon Musk. So I'm not the kind of guy that says it was solely done by him. He had a lot of help, and he had a lot of people help him get there, but he was the driving force. He was the one kickstarting that. He was the what everyone called the idiot. You had to be considered dumb in order to invest all your money, basically all he had left, in an electric vehicle company and a rocket company. That was like the worst possible use of funds that anyone... It was so risky, that's why no one did it. But he's the one who's figured out how to make reusable rockets feasible, which is what makes the Starlink business model possible. You can't do that with existing rocket technology. It's not profitable. So by lowering the cost to orbit, that's why like over 80% of all payload delivered to orbit right now is through SpaceX. That's why they can afford to send up as many satellites as they do at low Earth orbit. That's why the speeds are faster. So much good has come from him. And yeah, I think he makes a lot of mistakes, and I think he has a lot of dumb ideas. And I've on the same video on my EV channel, I've had people call me a Tesla fanboy and an Elon hater. I've been called a hater countless times simply for saying I don't think robotaxis will exist. And I think Elon's wrong about Tesla bot, and I think he's wrong about universal basic income, and I think he's wrong about all kinds of things. And I've seen, and I agree with Tim Dodd, the everyday astronaut, about Starship insisting on Mechazilla catching the Stage 2 versus landing it like a plane. I think Tim Dodd on the Lex Friedman podcast brought up excellent points as to why they're approaching Starship in the wrong way. And there's probably a more sustainable, more practical way to approach massive launches to orbit. So yeah, I don't think he's right about everything, but I think it's also dumb to think he's dumb. I think it's okay for someone to be smart and accomplish a lot of things, but also admit that they're not right about everything. And I think Elon is probably surrounded by people telling him that he's always right, which is why he doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut sometimes, or doesn't fully understand situations. I've seen him make little side comments on subjects that he clearly knows nothing about, and it's just bizarre. And it's like, okay, I think of all people on Earth to have a big ego, he's probably earned it based on what he's accomplished. I mean, he's used to everyone telling him he's crazy, right? That's what he was used to growing up with, early days, living out of his office, starting X.com, and then Zip2 turned into PayPal and all that. Everyone's telling him you're an idiot, and then he was like, I'm going to take all my money, put it in Tesla and SpaceX, and they're like, you're a moron, this is so dumb, this is going to fail, you will fail, there is no chance of success. And he was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And then he had all this success come out of his two ventures that he spent all this money and time on. So obviously, I think anybody that put that much time and investment into something that everyone thought would fail is going to develop a natural big ego dilemma where you think you can do anything and now nothing's impossible to you. So you would just continue to try things, and that's kind of what he's doing. Elon thinks everything is possible with the right mindset, and you just keep pursuing we're going to solve robotaxis, and yeah, we're gonna go to Mars next year, and we're gonna set up a self-sustaining colony, yeah, and we're gonna make Tesla bots that are just as capable as human, and they displace the entire labor force. Yeah, basically, if everyone's telling you you're a moron and you're an idiot and you can't do it, and then you've accomplished a bunch of those things, you're going to think that you can accomplish everything. That doesn't mean you will, but based on his success in several business ventures, that's why he thinks all that's possible. Glad you stayed on YouTube. Only visited once. Great for video game streaming. I'm not into games, though. I'm right there with you, Tech Geek. There are many well-researched videos online that would debunk most of the credit you give to Elon. I would disagree. I've watched many of the so-called well-researched, and I've seen them debunked by others. Personally, I have not watched a video yet by the self-claimed well-researched videos. I've seen lots of them claim that Falcon 9 rockets would never work. And they were well researched, and you go in the comment section and everyone agrees with the video uploader, and they say that, oh, reusable rocket boosters isn't a big deal, that doesn't change very much, and then they went ahead and changed everything. And I saw YouTubers all claiming that they couldn't be reused more than 10 times, and then they went off to use them 13, 15 times. He's proven a lot of people wrong. There was a lot of channels explaining why hydrogen is the future, not electric vehicles, and that never went anywhere, so... Yeah, I'm sorry. I have not seen a well-researched video explaining why Elon is actually an idiot. I can acknowledge that there's things he doesn't know much about, and there's things that are accomplished by his teams, not necessarily just him, but he's the one who assembled those teams and knew how to direct them in the proper direction. You need both. I'm not going to say that he can do it all by himself, but I'm also not going to say that it was purely done by others and nothing was contributed by him. Have I ever considered float plane? I have. I mean, I've seen countless alternative sites people have suggested. And what's funny is they keep changing over the years. One year they suggest one site, and then the next year they suggest a different site, and then the next year they suggest a different site. Try this, try this, try this. You notice it's always changing? It's because they can't keep the traffic going. They can't keep people on the platform. And that's why we all keep coming back to YouTube, is because people don't like moving platforms. People don't want to download another app. People don't want to make another account. Even if that other site is better. Even if that other site has better CPMs, even if that site has a better layout or better video quality or better comment design, better UI, better revenue sharing. It doesn't matter if it's better. People don't like moving platforms. That's just what I've learned over the years. That's why Meta buys out the competition. They don't replicate them internally. That's why Elon bought Twitter, didn't make his own x.com website or anything. And, yeah, I don't like people that are so black and white on a lot of subjects. It's just like, this site better, therefore everyone will move there. It's like, no. or Elon did dumb thing once, therefore he's dumb on all things, and he is an idiot. It's like, okay, I acknowledge that he's flawed, and he's made a lot of mistakes, and there's a lot of things he's going to continue to get wrong, but I also think it's ridiculous to act like he hasn't accomplished much, or that he's a moron, or like after achieving all that he's achieved. I've seen that disproven. Have you read books about Elon Marngel? I feel like you're falling for a lot of the myths about him being already wealthy. He was sleeping on floors. He didn't inherit a bunch of money. He knew he could work and get money if he needed to, but he had to borrow money from friends to pay rent, essentially. I'd encourage you to read a few books about his life. If you had, you'd probably understand a bit more of his upbringing, because I see people just paste that over and over again. Well, he was wealthy before. It's like, he didn't. If he was wealthy before, he wouldn't be sleeping on his office floors. He could have just bought a mansion rather than, blow all his money on office space. And they specifically bought an office that was close to the internet provider so that they could have it pumped in through a hole in the floor. If he had a bunch of money anyway, he wouldn't be doing those things. I don't think you're well researched on it based on what you're telling me. I'd be willing to change platforms if nothing changed about it. There you go. I think the bigger problem is you can't get a bunch of people to move all at once. It'd be one thing if you could get like 500 channels to all switch to a competing site. But what happens is you get one channel that moves to one, and then a different channel that moves to another, And everyone's like, okay, but I don't just watch you. I watch all these channels, so I'm going to keep having to come back to YouTube to watch everybody else. I'm not going to download one app just to watch you and make a whole account just for you. YouTube's as great as usual and not sending out notifications. Of course. Yeah. I mean, you can... Right, he did that for it. Yes. He consistently slept on the floor and forgot to pay his rent and had to borrow money from his friends so that he could get attention. That makes so much sense. I don't know where you guys get these theories, but they're not based on any kind of evidence. They're just kind of wild accusations. But no, if Elon just cared about money, he would not have thrown it all in a rocket company, an electric vehicle company. That was literally the worst idea you possibly could have had for as an investment. I see people copy pasting the same things too. The research is they watched like 2 YouTube videos by someone who also read a poorly written article, and there's a lot of false information out there that isn't backed up by anything. Art Niel, thank you for the super chat. He says, watching from the Philippines. Hey, all the way from the Philippines. Thanks for you to tune in. I'll be there later this year. Thank you for your support. I appreciate it. Hydrogen is dumb. It's only clean on the consumer end, which is why I prefer electric cars. No, I agree. We don't need to get into the hydrogen thing. It's stupid. Why is it until now Apple will not add blood pressure monitoring on Apple Watches? I don't know. I feel like that's been around on other smartwatches for a while. So I'm confused by that as well. Maybe they just can't stuff it in. If Elon cared about money, he wouldn't have bought Twitter. Not gonna lie. I completely agree. That was a horrible idea if you care about money. He also, specifically, this is filed in SEC documents. He sold a particular amount of Tesla stock in order to maximize the amount of taxes he paid. He was sick of people claiming he didn't pay taxes, so he intentionally was asking, like, how much taxes should I pay? And he has paid more taxes than any other human being on planet Earth. But, like, you could see in real time what stocks he was selling in order to hit those tax maximums, essentially, the taximums. And I was like, if all he cared about money, that would be very stupid. He could have just kept the stock, essentially. He could have kept a lot more of his Tesla stock in order to pay less taxes, but he chose not to. Hasael says, I will never buy an Air or Mini product. They are just playing catch up, and most want you to pay top dollar for stuff that was on Pros 3 to 4 years ago. My M1 Pro MacBook Pro is ahead of the 2024 MacBook Air. Yeah. I mean, I think I kind of agree with that, but when you say Mini, I'm a little bit more confused, because Mini is prioritizing a different form factor. It's not necessarily that it's not Pro. It's just that some people wanted a more compact device. Same thing with the iPad Mini. You can fit that thing in your pocket. You can use it with one hand. Your iPad Pro is not going to be able to do that. Unless maybe you got big pockets or something. But I feel like I kind of agree with you on Air, but I like the pricing benefits of them. So yeah, you will be ahead when you buy the Pro products, but you'll probably be spending more because of that. I read articles on Elon. My personal take is that I don't like him, but I'll give him credit where... I just feel like you should probably, like... Articles is not much research, in my opinion. You just say, I've read a few articles, because there is a crap ton of false articles. It almost takes nothing to write an article, and a lot of them have straight up written things that aren't true, or I've seen them misconstrued so heavily by journalists. There's a lot of journalists that will literally, and it can be tracked. There's channels that track this, where they will literally put negative things about Tesla in a headline, find out that a Tesla was not involved at all, and they don't change it to a different brand. Like, there was a Polestar electric car was in a car accident, and it drove into someone's house. It had nothing to do with Tesla. But all that the media heard was there was an electric car that crashed into someone's house. So the journalists phrased the article, self-driving Tesla drives into personal residence. Once the news report came out that it was a Polestar, they changed it to electric vehicle. They didn't change it to Polestar. So, like, there's traceable evidence of journalists that will phrase things intentionally against Elon because they know that generates more clicks, that once the truth is revealed, they don't hold the same standard. Tesla crash, just measurably, you can see in news traffic, Tesla crash gets 10 times as many clicks as, like, Toyota crash or Ford vehicle crash. They don't even say the brand most of the time. They just say vehicle destruction. I don't love Elon, but I don't personally. I don't like Elon either. But I think it's dumb to act like he hasn't accomplished amazing things that we're all going to benefit from. I think more people are connected to the internet now and more connected with loved ones because of him. And I think we're going to have a cleaner atmosphere and cleaner air because of his adoption and acceleration of sustainable transport. Does that mean he's perfect? Of course not. He's made stupid decisions all the time, left and right. That applies for all sources, so I take the articles that are pro-Elon with a grain of salt as well. I'm saying that books done by researchers that have studied Elon and met Elon and interviewed people that worked with Elon and, you know, people that actually do research, not just read a couple things, is a little bit different. I'm not basing my information off of pro-Elon articles. I'm basing it off of people that have interacted with him, know him, people that have worked with him directly, that actually have evidence to back up their claims, not just, well, I read this one thing. Let's see. I didn't want Elon and Tim to settle their beef. I wanted him to continue selling his Tesla stock to fund his own phone so he loses control. As of 2023, I don't think Tesla needs Musk anymore. I agree with that. I don't want Elon at Tesla anymore either, but I think that Elon probably was aware of how much harder it was going to be to create a competing iPhone because, once again, very difficult to get people to move platforms. That's why we basically just have iOS and Android. Windows Phone didn't work out. Fire Phone didn't work out. Amazon, with all of their money and power, couldn't get people to move away from Android and iOS. So that's why, again, it kind of reinforces my viewpoint of people like the platforms that they're on. And Elon probably knew at least a little bit about that. So figured creating a competing smartphone brand was not going to go well. But I, too, also would have been fascinated to see Tesla or whoever, or Starlink or whoever it is, Boring Company, Neuralink. It would be fascinating to see, like, an Elon company try to make a competing smartphone. I don't think it would go very well. I don't think it would succeed, but I still think it would be fascinating. I think it would be kind of amazing to watch unfold. You need a red MacBook iPhone case to match your Apple Watch band. I don't do phone cases. I don't like Apple Watch cases, iPhone case. I've yet to find an iPhone case I like. I've tried Apple's, I've tried third parties, that's everything, right? I've tried first and third parties, but yeah, where's Mike in the chat? He read a really good book on Elon too. YouTube's as great as usual. Yes, they are. The reason I asked about Floatplane is because it has stuck around and sustainably grown. The site is much smaller, though, and I know it will never get to YouTube size. Well, again, that's why I kind of visualize that it won't. I don't know the numbers on Floatplane, but I'm guessing it's smaller than Twitch. And Twitch, I was making substantially less than I was on YouTube. So you basically, you're kind of stuck in this vicious cycle. This is why a lot of creators won't leave platforms, is because the more viewers you have, typically the better CPMs you get. So when you have a smaller platform with less viewers, the advertisers are less likely to spend as much money there, and the CPMs tend to not be as good. So also, it's just for site simplicity. I asked my audience, where do you want me to live stream? And the vast majority voted YouTube. It was not even close. And there's been like a tiny fraction of the number of people that wanted me to stay on Twitch suggesting Floatplane, but I think it's just because they watch Linus Tech Tips. I don't think that's because there's actually a huge demographic of my audience there. Honestly, because Floatplane was started by Linus, I expect that very few of my audience would actually go there, because Floatplane is probably inherently biased towards being Linus Tech Tips groups over there. Let's see. Tom Zhu essentially replaced Elon. Yes, Tom Zhu is amazing. Tom Zhu spoke at Investor Day, and he's done incredible things for Tesla, and I also think Drew Baglino is amazing, and I think that there's a great group of talent in the Tesla board right now. I don't think they need more people. I think they need less. And I think that all Elon's focus, I was talking with my father-in-law about this right now, because we were both complaining about Elon back and forth about how he misses the point and he's biased and he's got these double standards. And, it's funny because you guys probably watching the stream thinking I'm this big Elon fanboy defender, when in reality I'm complaining about him all the time. I just think you gotta look at him as a human being. Human beings are not one-sided. There's, just like all of you, there's probably great things about you and there's some flaws all of you have. And I look at Elon the same way. There's some great things about him and there's some flaws. And I think it's important to acknowledge both. And it's silly to me when people act like there's only one side to people. And for some, there's definitely more bad than good, but I tend to think Elon, even though he makes a lot of dumb decisions and I think he can be hurtful, I think his intentions are mostly good. And there's a lot worse billionaires out there. What's sad to me is, like, if you're looking for a big rich guy to punch up at, there is so many better corrupt big rich guys out there. There's so many people that what's hilarious to me is, like, if Elon would have just sold PayPal for the $200 million, bought an island in Jamaica and just had a mansion and just chilled there and did nothing, never worked again, and never made Tesla, never made SpaceX happen, and we'd have worse atmosphere, less affordable electric vehicles, and we'd have less internet access, people would hate him less. Like, we would have preferred that rich guy just do nothing. But here's a guy, even though he's flawed and he's made a lot of mistakes and I don't like a lot of his decisions, he's putting all of his time and energy into trying to make the world a better place, trying to make us excited to explore the cosmos, and trying to make us enjoy vehicles that have less emissions and are better for the environment. Like, he's trying to make the world a better place. Granted, we don't like a lot of the way he does it, and his motivation for Twitter is like, I want free speech, which I see a lot of flaws in, based on the way he's running it with, required Twitter Blue to vote on the poll thing. But the intention is still good. And honestly, all these people that complain about him would probably not hate him as much if he would have just sold PayPal and done nothing, which I find funny. I've never heard of float plane, so that's not a good sign. That's what Yunder's saying, I guess. What are your thoughts on this idea? A new USB-C 15 Pro could be your all-in-one, one on the go and at home, connected to Thunderbolt 4 dock/peripherals and monitor feasible. Yeah, I've talked about that many times. That's just Apple version of Samsung DeX. I like that idea. That's the closest thing I could think of that would make me consider getting a new iPhone. But honestly, even then, like, when I go on my trips, I'm still gonna need like a laptop I can take with me. I'm not going to be able on my trips to take a big external monitor with me. So it would be cool to have a smartphone with a chip that was really powerful. And then maybe at my desk when I get home, I can just dock it with a monitor and, that's my Mac. And then I have a laptop to use with me on the go. But I'm still going to need a laptop. It's not going to replace the MacBook. Ashley Vance's Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, and the Quest for a Fantastic Future is a decent biography. Ashley writes for The Economist, Chicago Tribune, CNN, CNET, and a few others. Yeah, I remember that one. That one was good. Some people are flawed because they exist, and others are flawed because they don't exist. That's interesting. Would I even use it, though? It would depend on how fast the chip is, I guess. Like, if I'm theorizing when we get on the 3nm architecture, or maybe the 2nm, 1nm architecture, we could have an insane amount of chip efficiency and speed. If that chip was like on par with my MacBook Pro, then I would like the idea of just having an external monitor that I put my phone on and it powers the whole thing. And I would use it probably at my desk, because that would be my camera and everything. But yeah, once I go on a trip, I would have to go back to using my laptop. People hate on Mr. Beast for curing people's blindness or donating shoes to kids in need. Some people just want to hate because they're not content with their own lives. I agree. I think there's a lot of hatred out there, and there's a lot of pessimism and a lot of cynicism, and I don't think that's more of what the world needs. That's why I cover tech stuff, in case you're curious. It's why I don't get into politics. That's why I don't cover political news and current events and stuff, is because in that field, if it bleeds, it leads, as they say. Bad news just inherently sells better than good news. And the main reason I like technology, both from Apple and Tesla and SpaceX and whoever, is because technology is mostly just about how do we make the world better? How do we make products that enable a more enriched life or a more connected life? And how do we more better document our surroundings and our environments? And how do we stay in touch? And it's just it's a competition for people to get together at these big tech companies, work together, and figure out how can we solve problems. That's what engineers do. That's what engineering is all about, is like trying to solve problems. And there's a lot of big world problems out there, but there's solutions that very talented engineers have come up with. And I feel like they get together at these different companies, and one tries to come up with a better solution than the other. And it's like playful competition. It's a playful way for people to try to find what the best solution is. And the free market gets to kind of decide and dictate, this is the option that I think's best, and this is the option that I think's best. And we get to debate on what solution and what engineering challenges are worth tackling or not worth tackling, or what approaches are worth looking into versus not looking into. It's just full of hope and optimism for the future. Technology is like the pursuit of answers, the pursuit of solutions. And I don't love the concept of we need to figure out how to tear someone down, or like, okay, there's a bunch of people enjoying something, whether it's Elon Musk making something or Mr. Beast trying to do good, and there's always this crowd of people that are like, well, how do we make it seem not that good? How do we make it seem worse? How do we make people not like this thing? You know, like, can't you just divert some of that attention and some of that energy rather than the Adam ruins everything? Like, okay, how many terrible things can Adam figure out? Like, you know, how many ways can we financially motivate someone to tear people down? Can we divert more of that energy towards something more hopeful, something more optimistic, something more exciting, more towards answers and solutions, rather than just here's more reasons to hate people? It's just, if you don't like people, just don't focus on them. Just don't think about it too much. Mr. Beast is one of the few big YouTubers that have not promoted random cryptocurrencies to his audience, I believe. I'm grateful for that, yeah. I think Mr. Beast is a wonderful channel. I don't watch him, but I I see all the good he does, and I think his motivations are... I'll just say I'm glad he's like the biggest YouTuber, essentially. I think he deserves it. I think he's earned it. He's understood the algorithm, and he's figured out how to make content that a very large percentage of people enjoy watching. I don't envy him, though. It seems like a lot of pressure, and it seems like a lot of scrutiny, again, from the people that attack him when he tries to do good things. So I would not want to be in his position, but I admire his diligence, and I've listened to him on podcasts, and I value his perspective, and I've modeled my channel a lot of the times off of things he said, not directly like fill my office with iPhones, but you know, the part of the reason I like downgraded my iPhone to the iPhone 10 was listening to him talk about how YouTube can be a lot easier if you try to focus on content that's not so time sensitive. And he was like, that's why my channel has done so well, is because a lot of these videos keep raking in views years after they were uploaded. And I was like, okay, well, how can I apply that to the tech space? You know, with a lot of my videos, leaks and rumors and stuff, they're only relevant for a couple days or even weeks, and then they're irrelevant, and then no one watches them again because there's no point. They're not meaningful anymore. So I was like, well, I can do skits, and maybe the skits make people laugh, and that keeps them coming back. Or I can talk about how older tech is doing and how tech has aged as the perspective of, okay, this is something you can keep coming back to. This is a video that's not going to be dated right away after just a couple weeks. So I credit a lot of what I've learned from him, and I think he's done a lot of good for the world. And there's a lot of YouTubers that I don't think do good for the world, and I think there's actually a lot of YouTubers that do a lot of bad and are being very damaging to our youth and our society. But I don't talk about those people because I think the best thing you could do for people that you don't like is draw attention away from them rather than tear them down. You know, like if you hate it when I talk about Elon Musk or you don't want to talk about that, I think the best thing you could do is suggest other topics. So just try to get this stream, try to get the chat talking about something else. Which non-tech slash EV YouTuber would you like to meet slash collab with the most? Ooh. They would never do it because I watch this channel very closely and I've watched them for years and I know their personality and I know they just, based on how well I know them as a channel, I know they wouldn't like me, but I love Red Letter Media with a passion. They do movie reviews, usually older movies, sometimes new movies, but I've been watching them since I was in middle school and they're just hilarious to me. They make me laugh and I love their personalities and they're just super funny to me, and I would love to be on one of their shows or meet them one day, but they wouldn't want me. I can trust that. I can tell you that. There is way bigger influencers slash personalities. There's like directors of feature films that have offered to come on Red Letter Media, and they didn't agree to it. So I'm a nobody compared to that guy, and they said no. So I would love to meet them one day, but I probably never will, and that's okay. I'm sure that they'd probably look at one of my videos and be like, ew, yeah, I don't want to talk to that guy. But yes, I love Red Letter Media. That would be awesome to meet. Mr. Beast isn't that large. No, he's way bigger than PewDiePie. I think you haven't looked up Mr. Beast recently, Neem. Did Tim Cook single-handedly stop a Tesla phone from happening? Yeah. I think he did, technically. Because we have Elon on the record saying that if Twitter was banned from the App Store, they would make a competing smartphone. I think that would go horribly, but I would still love to see it. I don't think it would be successful, but I just think it would be really, really funny and interesting to see Tesla make a phone. I was like, how would they try to make that a good deal? I just love to speculate on the concept of it, you know? Like, how would they try to compete with Apple and Google at the same time with their own app store, and would they include some kind of Tesla perks to try to get more Tesla people on board with it? You know, if you buy the Tesla phone, you get cheaper supercharging or something. You know, I would be fascinated by that. Do good for your enemies and heap burning coals in their head. Well, there's another method. Yeah, Mr. Beast has like way more than 100 million subs, and that's just on his English channel. He has a Spanish channel that also has like tens of millions of subscribers. He's way bigger than PewDiePie now, and that's fine. I don't think sub count matters. Would the phone be sleek like a Model S or rugged like a Cybertruck? Yeah, exactly. I know. It would just be cool. I don't think it would work out. I think a bunch of Tesla bulls would probably buy it, which would be kind of funny to see all the people in the Tesla community all switch to this new dorky, weird-looking phone. But yeah, I think it would be kind of funny to watch. I welcome the competition. I'm not saying I believe it would work. I'm not saying I would stop using my iPhone. I definitely wouldn't, but it would be funny to see them try, I guess. Let's see. What will be my next iPhone? I keep trying to answer this. I feel like it doesn't matter how many times I answer it. People keep asking. I don't know. It depends on how this phone ages and how good the 15 is. And, you know, there's so many variables. Like, I don't have a 5-year plan like Disney Marvel shows, you know. I don't. Here's phase 2. Next year on April 15th, I will upgrade to the 11 Pro 128 gig silver, and then 2 years and 3 days after that, I will I don't know. I'm just waiting to see what happens, and I will tell you guys what happens. Right now, I'm using the iPhone 10. It's working great. I'm happy with it. If it stops working great or something goes wrong with it, I will make a video about it, and I will tell you what is going on, and I will tell you what my plan is. And if the iPhone 15 comes out with some new feature, some new perk that I really like, I will tell you then if I want to upgrade to it or not. But the iPhone 15 hasn't come out yet, so I think it's not fair to Apple, and it's premature to try to decide whether or not I'm going to upgrade to it right now, because I don't know. Based on the leaks, I don't think so. Nothing about the leaked specs or features have convinced me that I need to get it over this, but there could be something Apple's got that the leaks have missed. Anyway, I started watching Mr. Beast way back when he had like 50,000 subs making vids in his mom's house. His current content is good, but not really my thing. Yeah, I'm with you there, Simply Sorry. It's not really my thing. I don't really watch that kind of video, but I understand why it does so well. But Mr. Beast actually has early access to the dubbed audio feature, so he has all of the languages on his main channel now. Ooh, nice. That's cool. But that might be why he has such a lead. Tech is a tool to enrich life for the better. Travel vloggers on YouTubers have figured it out, like Kara and Nate. Will you vlog during your future travels? Yeah, absolutely. That's why I always vlog my travels. That's what the most recent round of videos were on Tailosive Life. Sorry that Tailosive Life hasn't had a lot of content lately, but it's mostly just because I'm home right now and I'm working, so I'm in the middle of Tailosive work as of now. But once we go on trips again and we're traveling and we're seeing new places and new people and stuff, that's when I'll be back vlogging and stuff. Right now, there's just not a ton of things to vlog about. I mean, I have a list of things that I would like to make videos on. They're just, none of them are time sensitive. Whereas almost everything in the tech and EV space is a lot more time sensitive of like, I kind of want to get this out now. And I've got family in town and family events and stuff going on. So I'm like barely making time for the tech stuff. Once I get done with the tech stuff and I have free time, that's when I work on Tailosive Life. But right now I haven't had too much of that. You secretly know which iPhone will be your next one. You were just stringing us along for the ride. I genuinely don't, James. I mean, I can tell you my current backup plan. I have backup plans. I mean, my current plan right now is just to keep using the iPhone 10 until something goes wrong. When something goes wrong, could be tomorrow, could be in 3 years, my backup would be to go to an 11 Pro because it would be the same size and it would still be the rounded chassis, but it would be on a newer chip, so it'd probably get a few more years of software support. And then after that, maybe a 13 mini perhaps, or maybe by then I could get a USB-C iPhone once the 11 Pro isn't running too well anymore. But I don't have a concrete plan. So again, the iPhone 15 might come out with something that I really, really like, and then I decide, you know what, I actually do want to have that. So far, I haven't seen anything, but Apple surprises us. They've been known to introduce some features that we didn't know we needed. That could happen again, so that's why I just say, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Fight Club and its message on consumers, culture, and religion? I haven't seen Fight Club in like, I want to say 10 years. I have a very rough understanding of it. So I'm sorry, Matt. I don't have a... I'm going to follow the first rule of Fight Club, though. We're not supposed to talk about that. So I'm going to keep it on tech. Hasael says, just permanently deleted my Reddit, TikTok, Discord, and Twitch. And Twitter is deactivated, just using Facebook for family, Instagram for friends, and YouTube for media, trying to work on myself more. That's great. I'm happy for you. That's a really good idea, honestly. I think that's something more people should do. I've seen social media turn people into really, really sad individuals that are just very hostile, and I think social media inherently just stirs up a lot of frustration in us, and I've seen it change people, which I don't like, and I think it's good when people can understand the effects of it and know how to step away from it. I think that's healthy. Do you think you'll be able to live stream while on the several month-long trip? Probably not. So I have a very, very rough understanding of what the internet situation will be like on this trip. But last I called the people that we'll be staying with, my family in the Philippines, we had them do a speed test on their internet, and it's not looking good. Their upload was like less than, I think it was like 4 megabits per second. And that was right next to the router, so I would have to stream in a place that would be somewhere. I don't know what their internet provider is. We don't have very firm communication with our family there because their internet is so bad. So because when they call us, the video call is so crappy and distorted, I have very little faith in the live streaming performance being good there. So I could be wrong. If I get the chance to live stream, I would like to. I will try if I can, but I'm assuming that I won't be able to. So there's very likely going to be a big chunk of this summer where I'm just not going to stream, which I apologize for, but I don't think it's worth missing out on the experiences of traveling, seeing the world, visiting family just for the sake of doing more streams. But that's why I'm doing them now. That's why I'm putting a lot of time into work and trying to keep in touch with you guys now while I can. But I still want to visit people, and sometimes there's a lot of people that we want to visit for extended periods that don't have the best internet, which means that I can't do my job as consistently. But I'll be back. It's not a permanent gone thing. Burkhart says you should hook them up with Starlink if it's available there. I think they just recently launched Starlink in the Philippines, but Starlink's messy. We've talked a lot about it. For one, I can't just ship my existing hardware to them because you can't reactivate plans after you've canceled them anywhere you want to. And the Starlink plans that we would have to subscribe to in order to get it to work and be able to pause the service would be very expensive. And on top of that, we don't know how many people in the area have Starlink. I don't know if you guys remember last time I streamed on Starlink, but it was not all that great. So based on the fact that I don't know the performance in their specific region, I could spend several $100s on equipment and close to $1,000 actually on equipment and service that wouldn't be any better than the service that is already there. So that's why we're probably not going to hook them up with Starlink. But over time, when they're able to send up more version 2 satellites and they're able to improve the uptime and increase the bandwidth, and maybe we could talk to a few people in the area that have Starlink, maybe I would consider it. But right now, I don't think so. It is a quick way to burn $1,000, I think. For my own family's privacy, I'm not going to disclose where in the Philippines we're going. I feel like it's already getting a little personal, telling you exactly what countries I'm going to. I won't say when I'm going. How about that? That keeps it a little ambiguous. But yeah, I've been asked to keep that by my family somewhat private, so sorry for not answering. But I feel like iPhone 12 is a great value now with 5G, MagSafe, new design, A14, etc. Yeah. It's fine. The battery life's not great, but for a lot of people that doesn't matter. So I think the iPhone 10 is a great value. You can pick it up. You can pick up an iPhone 10 for $200, and it's a solid phone. I've been using it the past couple months, and I love it. It's fine. Camera's not great, but I mean, if you insist on having the best camera, then there's not a lot of budget options for you. I know you use a Blackmagic to shoot your tech videos. I'm not sure what type, though. It's called the 4K Pocket Cinema camera. It's the one that doesn't shoot in 6K. It's the Micro Thirds lens attachment, but I wouldn't recommend that camera. So sorry if I'm not openly advertising. Here's the tech I use, because honestly, you probably shouldn't use the tech I use. There's way better stuff now. $200. Oh, way more than that. To get a Starlink dish is like $600 for the equipment, and then the service on top of that if you want it to be month to month and not permanent. So it would be kind of rude of me to get the residential plan in the Philippines and say, okay, now you guys got to pay for it the rest of the time, because we're not going to the Philippines often. I haven't been there in 4 years, so sorry, I'm not gonna pay for their internet access. I feel like that's a misuse of your guys' donations. I'll pay for all my family's internet bills because I'm going to be there for a couple weeks. All of Drew's future vacations will be on Earth. Sorry to ruin your privacy. We don't know that with the way Starship's going. I only asked because the part of the Philippines I visited has faster Wi-Fi than where I live. Yeah, then it's probably not the same place. It's not like a heavily populated area. I'll say that much. My dad still uses his 8, only had to replace the battery once, and it still is fine. Oh yeah, I admire those people. When you can get by with less, it's all the better to you. I still have friends using the iPhone 6, and they're happy with it. Maybe they'd be happier with a newer phone, but who knows. I'm really surprised you gave up your 13 Pro Max. You were so set on having that 120 hertz. I know. I don't think it was healthy, though. I think it was... For one, my mom really needed a new phone, so she was kind of asking me, like, okay, when are you going to upgrade? I want your old phone. So I was like, okay, mom needs a new phone, and also I spend way too much time on my phone anyway. So, yeah, it would be tricky to get Starlink there. set up and working. And again, I don't have a lot of faith that it would perform much better than the internet they already have. So I'm not going to be there that long. It definitely doesn't really justify the expense. But I would love to convince them to get Starlink. That would be cool. Take the dish and activate for a couple months, then cancel again. To be clear, I fully support you taking a break rather than going to the hassle. For one, it would be a lot more expensive to ship the Starlink there, to check the luggage. We already bought the ticket, so to add more checked luggage on top of that. The Starlink dish and the packaging you would need is not small. It would not be easy to take with us, and it would make it harder to switch between airports and stuff, because right now we're just going to pack everything with carry-on, so we don't have to check luggage, we don't have to go to the baggage claim and all that. And I don't believe you can just activate you cannot just activate US hardware in a different place. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. If you could add any new feature into iOS 17, what would that be? Easily top of my list, charge limiter. I want that more than anything else. I am so sick of the optimized battery charging, thinking it knows when to pause the charge and when to top it off to full. It still is wrong half the time. It doesn't know my charge routine, probably because my charge routine is irregular, but that's all the more reason to have a charge limiter. There's some people that don't have that predictable of a charge routine. I just hate the idea of the battery in the phone just being like, I know how to charge it. Don't worry about it. I'll figure it out myself. It's like, you haven't figured it out yourself, and you're directly and like intentionally eating into the battery health faster than you need to. So I would absolutely love a charge limiter, not just on iOS, but on all my devices. Thankfully, there's a third-party way to do it on my Mac, because optimized battery charging was ruining my MacBook's battery health. So thankfully, I found Al Dente, which lets me cap it at 80%. But it'd be funny if I see you on the way to the Philippines. I'm going to visit this country this December, which, by the way, best time of year to visit that country, in my opinion. That would be funny, yeah. I would like... I wouldn't know what you'd look like. But last time I was in the Philippines, I actually ran into a viewer, which was really cool. It was nice to meet them. I saw a video of AI-generated faces of historic famous people, and Van Gogh was just you. Oh, I take that as a compliment. I look like Van Gogh. Van Gogh to the pole. Sorry, don't do that. OBC broke on my MacBook. It worked great until the last macOS update. If we just had a charge limiter, I don't think you need to be a super nerdy tech guy to know how battery health works. To me, like it's very simple to just be like, only charge to full when you need it, keep it at 80% the rest of the time. That's it. It's not like rocket science, you know? It's not some fancy thing. Ever since I've had that feature on my car now, where I can just set it what to charge to, it's such a simple user interface. It's so basic that I want that on everything. Preserve battery health by limiting the charge capacity. Charge to full, and when I explicitly tell you to, and the rest of the time stop here. That's just how it should work on all our batteries to get them to last longer. And Apple is still insistent on, no, let me get it for you. I know how to do it. I'll figure it out. No, you don't. Like, home screen customization is one thing. Let me decide where the apps go. Let me decide what color the icons are. I don't care about that. That's not a big deal. But the charge limiter literally dictates the age of the device. It literally dictates how quickly your battery runs out. That affects how quickly you have to upgrade. That affects how quickly your phone gets throttled by the CPU performance. Like, that's a lot more important. That's one thing I'd really like control of, and there's a very, very easy and intuitive way to support that feature. It's not that complicated. It is very annoying. I had to turn it off on my AirPods because I was wake up from my shift in the morning and my AirPods wouldn't be fully charged. That's what I'm saying. They don't know your schedule. If you could just set it in there yourself, charge to full at this time. Apple Pay Later officially released it as a feature that could get me and lots of consumers in trouble. Super tempting to split up payments with the ease of Apple Pay. Thoughts on the feature? Yeah, I agree that it's probably a good idea for the business, but it's a horrible idea for the consumer. Basically, I feel like if you can't afford to buy something now, but you think you can afford to buy it in 6 weeks, you probably shouldn't be buying it in the first place. So I basically would recommend it to no one. I I won't say who, but I know people in my personal life that will actually like. There's other payment services out there that support things like Apple Pay Later, where they split up the payments across 6 weeks or whatever, and they will put those six payments on a credit card, which then they carry a balance on the credit card so that they don't have to pay for something for like months. And that kind of spending behavior just really encourages you to spend money you don't have, which I don't think is a good idea. It's dangerous, and I mean, I use a credit card not because I want to carry a balance, but because of the rewards. And it's also better for fraud protection. You know, it's a lot easier to dispute a charge that's not made by you if the money was spent by the bank, not on you. So it's like a fraud protection thing, it's a rewards thing, and it helps build your credit score, which can be helpful later in life if you're buying a house and that kind of thing, or people are doing credit checks on you. So because I've had a very consistent, I've always paid off my credit card, I've never carried a balance, I have a very high credit score, which means that if I ever did decide to buy another house or something, I could get really low interest rates on it because my credit score is so high. But I don't think I would want to get another mortgage, to be honest. If I bought another house, I would probably try to do it outright. But that's a whole different discussion. Charge limiter is anti-Apple. I don't care. They should still implement it. I mean, who decides what is anti-Apple? Everyone says charge. I mean, there's all kinds of things that people said was anti-Apple that they then later did. Could have argued ads on the lock screen is anti-Apple. Apple does that now. They'll do a push notification. Subscribe to TV Plus. Subscribe to News Plus. Apple has ads. People used to say the notch was anti-Apple. I remember that, and then they did it. Now it's don't get rid of the notch. The pill hole is anti-Apple. Getting rid of the home button is anti-Apple, or widgets on the home screen is anti-Apple. There's all kinds of things that other companies did that Apple didn't, and then you'd say, yeah, Apple doesn't do that, and then Apple does it. Oh, okay. I guess it's fine now. But if I suggest it, it's anti-Apple, I guess. Oh, I don't get it. They're going to let you have control over, focus modes, and you can have different home screens. You can delete apps from the home screen that are still in the app library. There's all kinds of customization things they've done that people used to consider not Apple. That's anti-Apple. I'm like, shut up. Good thing is throttling on iPhone isn't noticeable. Meanwhile, on Android, they just let your phone die at 25% battery. I've seen people that have their battery health dip below 80% start to have tons of problems, and then they replace the battery, and then the problems go away. My first-gen AirPods Pro have had the same problem since 2019, where one AirPod just doesn't charge at all overnight. Well, that's not optimized battery charging. That's usually more of a hardware problem. I've had that too, but I think it's typically when you get debris and stuff, and earwax and stuff starts building up on the AirPods, and then they don't mesh well with the pins. I don't think it's the AirPods deciding, yeah, don't charge that one. That's it. It is annoying, but I don't think it's a software problem. Not spend money you don't have. Yeah, I've never put anything on a credit card that I couldn't afford to buy outright. It's just I get a bunch of cash back every month by putting it all in the credit card. Like I just paid off my credit card yesterday, and in the past month, I got, well, not quite a month. In a couple weeks, I got $5 worth of cash back on things that I would have bought anyway. I didn't go out of my way to buy things just to get the cash back. These are mostly just bills, groceries, health insurance, my water bill, my car insurance, we went out to eat once or twice. And I just got a bunch of cash back on those things. It didn't cost me anything. The credit card is free, so I just get free money back. It's like if you go to a lot of places with Apple Pay, the Apple Card is like carrying around a 2% off coupon everywhere, which is nice. So I appreciate that aspect of it. Adding more ports is anti-Apple. That's true, and that's what they did, huh? If you're gonna use a get now pay later thing, then you should use it smart, not spend. Oh, I see what you're saying. I don't know of a smart way to use it. I can't think of a circumstance where doing the Apple Pay later would be a smart decision. I could visualize it on the credit card because you get cash back or you build your credit score, or you have an easy way, your expenses could be easily disputed if you get a fraudulent charge. Apple Pay Later doesn't have any of those advantages. It takes away all of the perks of a credit card and just all of the dangers. It keeps all of the dangers of a credit card, which is getting into the habit of spending money you don't have. I have healthcare. Yes, you're required to have healthcare where I live. I mean, you don't get like arrested if you don't have healthcare, but you get fined, and you have to pay a fee if you don't have healthcare where I live. So it makes more sense to just pay for the healthcare because you're going to have to pay for the fee if you don't have the healthcare. Do you need the Apple Card to use it? I don't know. That's a good question, but it's probably on the newsroom page. I guess this is breaking news, huh? I don't know if it really... Does this deserve a video? I'm torn on it. It's not really Apple tech news. Split purchases into 4 payments with 0 interest and no fees. Okay, but there's no cash back and there's no credit building. Let's see. Apple Pay Later in the U.S. designed with users' financial health in mind. Oh, great. Split purchases into 4 payments spread over 6 weeks. Users can easily track, manage, and repay their Apple Pay Later loans in one convenient location in Apple Wallet. Users can apply for Apple Pay Later loans of $50 to $1,000, which can be used for online... Oh, perfect. Just so you can buy your new iPhone. It doesn't seem like it requires the Apple Card. I think as long as you have the credit card in your wallet, it splits them up. But what are you buying that you can't afford to spend $1,000 now, but you can afford to spend it in 6 weeks? I feel like that 6 weeks is very intentional. The 6 weeks is precisely implying one more paycheck, because most people, I feel like, get paid once a month, at least, or even every 2 weeks. So the thought process is, okay, I can't afford this item now, but once I get my next paycheck, I can afford it, in which I'm like, yeah, you shouldn't be buying that thing if you need to wait till your next paycheck. I mean, I get it. You get excited and you get pumped. I want this now. But this is all just about how do we move inventory faster? How do we convince our Apple Pay customers to buy more things faster? My family absolutely is not rich, and we have... No, I don't know why. Are people thinking that healthcare is something only rich people have? Actually, you pay less for healthcare if you're not rich. If I made less money, I would pay way less for healthcare. I have friends that make under a certain amount per year, so their health coverage is subsidized by the state, so they don't have to pay anything for healthcare. But because I make a certain amount, I have to pay for healthcare. So I don't know what the rich thing has to do with it. Is the fine cheaper than the actual healthcare? Not really. It's close to the same price. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I remember when we looked back into it, we were like, okay, do we want to consider just not having healthcare? And we looked at the fees and we were like, it might be a little bit cheaper, but you're getting nothing. It's a fee. You'd be spending probably $100 or more a month on nothing, on fees that grant you nothing, or you can spend a couple $100 on healthcare that actually covers you in case something goes wrong, I guess. I also need it for my psoriasis medication. If I didn't have healthcare, I couldn't take my shots that I need. So remember the old days when Drew had all the red stuff on his forehead and his eyes and stuff? That was before I had the medicine I'm taking now. Tor says, me and my wife from the Philippines were there last September, October. It was over 5 years since we were there last time, this time with our daughter, soon 4-year-old. Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's fun. Yeah, I haven't been there in 4 years either, so this will be the first time in a while. Sunny Patel says, iPhone 6, 57% battery health. Battery varies based on calls or Safari, YouTube, but sometimes lasts literally 20 minutes, so you have to be glued to the charger. Yeah, my sister did that. She had a battery health at like 50% or something, and she just always had the charger nearby, but she eventually realized, hey, you know what? We should probably get the battery replaced in this one. So I actually took it. I went with her to the Apple store to get the battery replaced, and the guy at the store recognized me. He was like, hey, I watch your videos. That was cool. I saw him last year again. We went to that same Apple store and I saw him again. It was nice that he remembered me. In 2019, I used to use one of those buy now, pay later services because I didn't have any credit to get a credit card and I needed a $400 scooter to commute to school/work without draining my $1,200 bank. Financing can be super helpful. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're in a super pinch like that, but I don't think that's the intention most of the time. I think the intention is usually to get people to spend more than they have, but honestly, I mean, I don't know your exact financial situation, but if you only had $1,200 in your bank, I still don't think $400 was probably a good expense. I would have tried to find someone at school/work to carpool with, I guess, or at least change your income situation somehow. But I doubt that that's the majority of people using Apple Pay later. I mean, how is Apple pitching it on their site? Pay info. Yeah, like look at the website here. Oh god, universal control sometimes goes off. They're advertising in your bag Nike Air Force shoes. So I can't afford these shoes that cost $125. So I'm gonna wait till my next paycheck to be able to afford them. I don't know. I think there's the occasional handy use case where you're living paycheck to paycheck and you need something of like dire circumstance, but yeah, I think that there's far more likelihood that people are going to just buy things they don't need and drown themselves in debt with that feature. Let's see. A video would be interesting, and maybe it should be a good time to experiment with shorts more. Maybe. I've tried. I'm not good at shorts because every time I try to make a short, I feel like I leave out a bunch of details unless it's a very, very brief thought. And typically, if I give any amount of thought to, oh yeah, I should do a video on this, it's like, oh wait, but I want to talk about this, and I also should acknowledge this, and I want to bring up this. Let's see. Simply Sora said, and the fact that you can also get loans, it is setting you up for debt. Right. They're trying to get you more comfortable with debt. Apple is providing the loans for Apple Pay Later out of their own pocket rather than a partner bank, which is interesting. It's interesting. I would like to see Apple get more into the banking space, but not like this, I guess. This is not the direction I want to go in. Maybe do some skits as shorts. Well, that's what Tailosive Shorts is for. All the skits are there as short form. Healthcare I need is cheaper uninsured than with insurance, literally anywhere else in the world, and I could just use a public health service for no giant fee. Oh, Joshua said, I'm lucky to only need ADHD treatment, and I get that through Cerebral for less than a quarter the price of the cheapest health insurance I'm eligible for, which has a $10,000 deductible and a $700 premium. Sheesh! That's bizarre that... yeah, well, I've heard of that. I have a few friends that... they don't have insurance, but they do something else. It's called like a health savings fund that they contribute to, and they pay for most of their things out of pocket because it's weird. It's like medical companies will like cover they will charge more for things if you're insured, and they'll charge less for things if you're not insured, which is why that happens sometimes. But the type of thing I'm doing, it was like ridiculous. It was like if you tried to pay for my medication without insurance, it's like $7,000 a month, which is like, okay, nobody's doing that. That doesn't exist. Well, someone was about to subscribe to Tailosive Tech Plus, and then their message was retracted, I guess. But welcome, whoever that was. We'll see if their name pops up here in a second. If Amazon adds support for this, I might have to lock my phone in a safe. I think there's already third-party payment options that let you do, but Apple Pay Later isn't a new idea. There's other, I forget who it is. I think it's Venmo or PayPal or something. Someone else already has the you buy it and then pay for it over 6 installments. What features Apple is going to add this time around? I hope it's mostly stability, but I would like to be able to put the apps anywhere on the home screen. I don't think that's crazy. There are probably a few isolated examples where financing in Apple purchases makes sense, but 9 times out of 10, it's probably ill-advised. I can't think of it for an Apple purchase. Try, please. This is a live stream. This is interactive. Help me, Michael. Corcoran, tell me a situation where financing an Apple purchase is a good idea. Like, you're telling me someone has, like, for example, someone has $1,000 in their bank account and they want to buy a 14 plus. That's like dumb idea squared, right? I've got $1,000 in my bank account and I want to buy a 14 plus, and with tax and the storage option I want, it ends up being like $1,100. Therefore, I'll pay for it later. So someone with $1,000 on hand is buying an $1,100 phone, and they're gonna get a $200 paycheck later. So the end result is they have $100. But hey, I got a new phone. It's like that's probably just not a good purchase decision for someone that close to not being able to afford the product in the first place. Financing on an Apple purchase makes sense for a freshman who needs a laptop. If they're a freshman, what's their money situation like? Do they have an income stream? If they have an income stream, I would hope that they would have saved up and had some money set aside beforehand. If so, I don't think they should be buying a $1,000 laptop. If you can't afford to buy the $1,000 laptop, first of all, depending on the college you're going to, you might be dropping tens of thousands of dollars on tuition. So Apple Pay Later, stretching it into 6 weeks instead of 1 point, I don't think that is a good idea, personally. I also consider myself more privileged because no debt. School is paid in full by my grandparents. No rent, no car mortgage. That's good. I feel like the electric scooter was good debt to have, equivalent of car. I wouldn't say it's good debt. I would say very, very few. The only debt I think you could maybe argue is good is on assets. A scooter is not an asset. It's a liability. It kind of makes sense to have debt on things that appreciate over time because you know that when you go to sell it, you're going to get more than what you paid for it, which is why I think a mortgage is probably the best form of debt. It's still not good. I prefer not having debt if you can avoid it, but at least you can leverage it as, okay, I'm going to buy a house now. I can't afford to pay for all of it, but by the time it's paid off, it'll be worth far more than what I paid for it. That's when I think a good debt is excusable, but it's good debt on a scooter? No, I'm sorry. I don't see how that's good debt. That just seems like you're low on cash and probably shouldn't be spending too much money on anything, really, if you're that low on finances. An iPhone is something you're going to use for like 2 years anyways. Why not spread it out instead of putting $1,000 burden on yourself immediately? Well, I kind of see what you're saying. Like, instead of Apple Pay Later, pay it over the course of 2 years or 3 years with the iPhone upgrade program or something like that. But I don't know. I would argue if your financial situation is not that good, you should not be dropping $1,000 on a laptop or a phone. Like, if you can't afford to buy the whole thing now, but you can afford it in 6 weeks, you should be buying cheap, 2015 Intel MacBook for $200, and you should be buying iPhone 10 for $200 or iPhone SE2 for $200. Like, you should not be dropping $1,000 on things, in my opinion. Let's see. Oh, they don't know any more features Apple can add. That's why I would prefer the hardware if I had to choose one. Yeah, Mike's talking about 24-month financing, not paying 4. But even so, if you're that low on money, I still don't think you should be financing over the course of 2 years. It's just not. It's not a great financial situation. I pay for 3 phone lines, and it's not easy to pay for higher-end phones without financing. I have a Galaxy S23, a 14 Plus, and a 14 Pro Max, all financed as well as LTE, iPad 9. Okay, but does that mean it's a good idea to finance the payments, or maybe you should consider not spending that much in the first place? I think that the appeal of Apple Pay Later is the wrong solution to a bigger problem of living outside your means, because it's very dangerous to get in the mindset of, oh no, I can't afford it, I just need to get into more debt. That's why credit card debt is such a massive problem in this country, is because people aren't afraid of debt. They just think, oh, I'll put it on a card or I'll pay for it later. Don't worry about the cost. Just think about today's cost. And then before you know it, you're drowning in debt. It's out of control and you can't afford to pay anything. Getting out of debt is very hard, and the damages you can do to your credit score when you don't make those payments, because if you don't have that cash on hand, that means you don't have an emergency fund. Unexpected expenses come up. You could have a car breakdown. You could have a flat tire. You could have a phone break. You could have all kinds of things come up, You could have rent increase from your landlord or whatever, or you could get in a car accident and you got rising medical bills or whatever. It's good to have an emergency fund. If there's no emergency fund, because you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's when you start to realize, oh, I can't afford to pay for the things I have. You can't afford your own lifestyle, which is why I think it's dangerous to get into that mindset of, oh, I can't afford it now, but I can afford it in 6 weeks, so I'll buy it now. It's like, it's probably not a good position to be in. You're not too late to join, Anna Maria. Welcome. If you require financial aid, you can get a voucher from the school to pay for a laptop. If you don't require financial aid, you wouldn't need financing to begin with. I agree. I mean, if you're that broken or a freshman in college, you would probably be better off with a lower end laptop. Yeah, okay. So we agree on that. if you're on financial aid, I don't know if financing a $1,000 laptop is a great buy. I would stretch my dollar a lot more if my income was in that situation. You could get a phone from your carrier and pay it monthly. I don't recommend it, though. It's not cheaper. They make you think it's cheaper by showing you a lower number, but overall you're still spending just as much as or more as you're buying it new because of the interest payments and all that. Yeah, Dave Ramsey logic. I mean, there's a reason Dave Ramsey is so popular. I don't agree with everything he says, but the reason Dave Ramsey is so successful is because there's a lot of people that get into massive debt because of this type of spending behavior, and then they can't get out of it because they can't afford their own lifestyle. Not gonna lie, if people were smarter with their purchases, Apple product sales would tank significantly. Yeah, a decent amount, sure. I mean, it's probably hard to measure exactly how much of Apple's revenue is from responsible people that just buy phones and they can afford them versus how many people are buying iPhones that can't afford them but want them anyway. I don't know what that ratio is. Personally, I think relative to the average income, even buying the new iPhone every year is usually not that big of a strain on people's budgets. Usually that's not where it's I don't think people getting into massive debt is usually because of smartphones. It's usually cars and housing. It tends, or food. Food is a huge one. Like my wife is into budgeting and breaking down where a lot of people's money is spent. And I think a lot of people can start to live outside of their means by not looking at their budget, not paying attention to where their money's going. Sure, that the tech purchases can be a big factor in that, depending on how much of an Apple sheep they are. But usually when you look at the overall picture, we used to watch these TV shows that would break down people in debt and how to figure out their budget. Usually where most of the money was going was car payments, housing, like they rented an apartment that was outside of their budget and they thought they could afford it and they couldn't. Or they got a mortgage on a place that was way too high and the interest rate was way too high and they couldn't afford it. And a lot of the time it's lifestyle things, like people... which that includes, a car payment. People wanted a car that they couldn't afford, so they got a loan on it. And then there's interest on that loan that increases over time. And they get credit cards because they didn't have the cash because they wanted to pay for things later. And a lot of the time it's, I went out for drinks. I went out to a nice restaurant. I went out to eat there, and I bought this, and I bought this. So tech is part of it, but I don't think the vast majority of people are struggling financially because of iPhones. So I think that a lot of people buy iPhones that they don't necessarily need. I know some people that have bought really high-end iPhones that probably would have been fine with something cheaper, but they make a decent amount. They're not like ultra rich or anything. I don't have millionaire friends, but they make a middle class style income, and they can afford to spend $1,000 on a phone every couple of years. And I tend to think that's most of Apple's sales. Jupiter says, I went into debt once, never again. It's not a fun feeling. Student loans is a major crisis in the U.S., so one of the few kinds of debts that you can't discharge in bankruptcy either. Yeah, I know. That's why there's a lot of people advocating for student loan forgiveness plans, but that gets messy really quick. Because then it's like, okay, well, these people already paid off their student loans, and now you're saying these people don't have to. Can the people who paid off their loans get refunded? Well, no, because they took out student loans 1 year earlier, so they don't qualify. Yeah, it gets messy. My mom is a bankruptcy attorney. Close to half of the people she represents went bankrupt due to medical costs. This is U.S. specific. That could be another one too. Yeah, medical bills. Let's see. Drew, debt is a necessary evil. I got an expensive college laptop because of a college told me the specs I needed. It was expensive, not a choice I had. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it was your choice. I'm just saying I don't know if financing it over the course of 6 weeks is the best way to go about it. I mean, of course, I'm sure you probably tried for scholarships. I don't think you were likely required to take that course, but you probably knew going into that college and that major that you wanted to study in that they were going to not provide their own equipment. So you're kind of going into it with a certain expectation. But I just think, regardless of what you're going to school for or what you're working for, that they want you to have a laptop of certain specification. If you can't afford it now, but you can afford it in 6 weeks, to me, that is an indication of living paycheck to paycheck, which is not a good sign. And you want to get out of that situation as quickly as possible. To which I would say, buy it used, buy it secondhand. That's why I would say buy it off eBay. Buy an M1 MacBook Air for $700 instead of $1,000 from Apple. I'd be as cautious as possible, or consider, is this a course I really need to take? Like if you really are that tight on cash, I think there's much bigger problems going on. And you shouldn't be buying, like Apple's showing, Nike Air Force One shoes. Apple's not pitching this as like you are really tight on cash and you can't afford to pay for your medical bills, or you can't afford to pay for this laptop that you need for a college course. They're always pitching it as just pick up an iPhone, pick up some shoes, pick up some whatever, just pay it later. Nike payments. Oh, yeah, the Apple Store, 2 of 4, Target. Yeah, I went to Target. I bought some clothes that I couldn't afford. I went to the Apple Store, bought some AirPods that I can't afford. That's not the pitch. I understand there's some edge cases out there that you guys are pushing for, but I don't think that's the majority of people that are going to be using this feature, and I don't think that's even how Apple is intending this feature to be used. The problem is that Apple think they have to get new electronics every year, and that's what gets them into debt. I think it's the mindset that gets them into the debt. I don't think it's solely the electronics, but the electronics contribute to it. But like Wenhen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing Wenhen's name, but thank you for supporting the channel. Their mom's a bankruptcy attorney, and she said that medical costs is one of the highest reasons that people fall into debt. On top of that, I also think it's usually more things like housing, cars, food and drinks. I pay more than $100 for shoes, but for a valid reason. I need a lot of ARC support for New Balance. Okay. I mean, there's reasons, but I just still don't think it's a good idea if you need 2 paychecks put together. You can't wait 6 weeks? I guess that's my go-to solution. How often can you not afford it now? You can't wait 6 weeks, and the number of situations where I would see that as responsible is just super. Yeah, buy cheaper $30 Nikes that have the same amount. Buy them secondhand. If you're that tight on cash, I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not a big shoes person, so you're not a clown, I guess. I'm going to split up Twitter Blue into 4 $2 payments using Apple Pay Later. What a great idea. No one buying Air Force Ones is doing so for podiatric reasons. Yeah, I don't think so. Let's see. Wages need to go up and be tied with inflation, but people still need to be more conscious with their purchases and not fall into the consumerist mentality. Yeah, I mostly agree with that. Pay, like minimum wage and stuff, is very much dictated by supply and demand. There's not a lot of certified doctors, so that's why doctors get paid a lot. And there's pretty much anybody off the street can learn how to flip burgers at McDonald's, which is why they don't pay people at McDonald's very much. It's because they have lots of supply to choose from. But when there's not enough people applying, that's when the pay goes up. So if you pursue jobs that are obtainable by the masses, it's inherently more likely that that job will pay less than a job that is more specialized that not as many people can do, which is why it's good to find what your interests and unique skill set can be so that you can do something that's a little bit more specialized that not anybody can do. That way you can make a little bit more doing it. JG Wentworth, I want my money now. Who gets into debt for food? I probably spend between $200 $300 a month at the grocery store, and I'm doing great. People that don't pay attention to their spending. I know people that have done it. They have a certain standard. They want to eat at nice places, and they want to eat or they go out for drinks to kind of forget about the work day. And drinks are kind of expensive, and they rack up those bills when they hang out with their friends. Sometimes it's social things. Oh, all of us, we're going out to eat. We're going to go to this bar. You want to go grab some food? And everyone's accustomed to, okay, everyone orders one thing because it's kind of socially weird to order one thing for the table or one dish that you and your friends split and share, because that's kind of awkward. So for the social awkwardness, you order your own separate thing, and by the end of it, you've spent $15 to $30 a night, and you're going out a couple times a week, and it creeps up on you. If you're not looking at it, you'll be surprised how much people will spend on that kind of stuff. I know people who spend $300 a month on phone bills and financing phones. Yeah. It's not good, but honestly, most people are probably spending more than $300 a month on food, and they don't necessarily need to. I'm guilty of this as well, by the way. I'm not acting like other people do this and I don't. I mean, I do it less, but before I was married and before we were budgeting as closely, I was easily going out to eat, spending more than I should have on food and groceries and drinks and that kind of thing. Although not alcohol. I've never paid for alcohol. Joshua says, I was spending almost $900 a month on DoorDash. Yeah, there you go. It'll stack up. I will be in a better boat for insurance once I get my undergrad. Once I start going to seminary, I get church-provided insurance, and it's great. Oh, I see. Yeah. People do it. They put it on credit cards, and then they're like, ooh, the credit card is kind of high. It's usually not one thing. It's usually a combination of a lot of things, but Apple Pay is used a lot. A lot of people use Apple Pay for all kinds of things, and incorporating this Apple Pay Later feature, I worry about what that could encourage. Wages being dictated by supply and demand is partly true, but knowing how the economy works, corporations are also just squeeze the wages as low as possible, increase profits, so having a living minimum wage is essential. Well, there's an inverse problem with that too, because if you raise the prices on the income, like we've been raising the minimum wage in California for years, and it hasn't really changed all that much. What happens is it raises the cost of living, so now you can't make as much. That's why you notice like the minimum wage is highest in like the highest living areas, like LA, but then LA has like the worst homeless problem. It's like impossible to make a living there because the cost of living goes up as you increase the price of goods, and then then that minimum wage doesn't mean any much. So it's not like problem solved, just increase minimum wage. No, it's like the more expensive you make the worker, the easier it is to automate that worker, which is why there's a big push for like there's more and more restaurants that are going more automated, where they don't have people taking the order, and now you just order on the phone, and then the food comes out and you just grab it, is because, well, you increase the cost of operations by increasing the minimum wage. So once the minimum wage goes up, there's the robotics company that or the software development that can replace jobs has a much higher budget to work with. Because now, well, if you can replace 2 workers, you're going to save us $60,000 a year, $100,000 a year, depending on the living environment. So it's not a one-size solution, is all I'm trying to say. The argument behind pay later is that you can pay for the thing opposed to dipping into savings that you do have. Stock sale optimization, definitely no benefit to poor people, though. I would argue that you're still dipping into those savings. It's just not as direct, but I use Apple Pay frequently, but as my debit card mostly, so I don't have credit card debt. Well, that's good. I'm fortunate to be in a nice city metro area with a very low cost of living. That's good. Prices go up when you increase wages. The problem is the government needs to limit corporate profits through a windfall profits tax. That is the ideal scenario, but of course, the government is bought by the corporations. Well, I mean, you don't want the government having too much control, because just like how a corporation is corrupt, a government can also be corrupt. So if a government... Here's another problem. We were talking about this at a family gathering recently. So again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. If you put a limit on how much a business can make, it makes it much, much harder for new businesses to survive. Limiting profits disincentivizes the company to grow on one hand, and they're less likely to offer jobs in the first place because they don't have as much profits for starting up new businesses or new locations. They can't grow as quickly, so there's less job offerings in the first place. Secondly, if you start doing the thing which they've already started to do here where I live, they say, okay, if your business employs like 20 plus people, here's your minimum wage. Whereas if your business employs less than 20 people, you have a lower minimum wage. And the thought process behind that was, oh, okay, well, you're not as profitable because you're a small business, not a corporate entity. Therefore, we want the cost of operations to be lower for you. But now, the labor force is disincentivized to work for the small business. I'm going to make more at McDonald's than I am at the mom and pop burger shop down the street, because McDonald's has to pay me $15 an hour, whereas mom and pop are going to pay me 10. So it puts the smaller businesses, it actually indirectly gives more power to the corporations because they can afford to pay that. But the smaller businesses that can't afford to pay that are left stranded. They can't hire as many people because they can't compete. They can't offer the health coverage that the other companies do, or they can't offer the same wages that the other companies do. So that's why it's a mess. Everything's got a give and take. Everything causes a reaction on the other way. There isn't a fix-all solution for anything. That's the problem with leadership today. They don't understand the complexity of improving problems. I think you're kind of screwed either way. I think you just have to kind of you have to pick your problems, essentially. We have a constitutional right to monitor our government. We have no right to see what's going on behind the scenes of a private corporation. I guess there's some truth to that. Some people might want that changed. A lot of people watching in different places. Some of you might be from the U.S. Some of you might be in different countries where that mindset or that culture isn't the same way. You're comparing by the scooter and car wrong. By taking out the loan for the scooter, he could have saved money on buying a cheap car and having to pay for petrol. Well, I didn't say he should buy a car. Did someone else say he should buy a car? I just don't think that the $400 scooter is necessarily a good idea. We shouldn't pay taxes to subsidize companies. No, I agree. But I'm not saying that's a good solution either. I'm just saying that acting like just raise the minimum wage solves the problem. It actually creates a lot of other problems. To say you have different problems. But all I'm saying is for the past few decades, we keep raising the minimum wage, and it doesn't seem to have that much of an impact on the living standards, at least where I am. Maybe it's different overseas because they do it better in some way. But I do think that limiting individual paychecks might be better than trying to increase minimum wage, because automation is growing more and more commonly, especially in fast food industry. So there's going to be an increasing number of jobs going away. But if you can keep cost of living down and you keep the minimum wage the same, you might have a better chance of not automating because the automation's too expensive relative to what it costs to employ the worker. So ultimately, I just think it's a good idea to not just probably try not to long-term settle with a minimum wage job. I don't think it's a good idea, just because minimum wage jobs are usually much easier to automate, or they're more likely for you to be living paycheck to paycheck, depending on the cost of living you're in, the area. So I mean, I worked minimum wage jobs too, but I never looked at them as permanent jobs. I didn't look at them as a career. I looked at this as something to pay immediate bills while I worked towards something else. It wasn't like, I used to work on the Mandarin Ranch, and technically I made less than minimum wage there, but I was like, this will help me have some extra money to pay for bills and buy some equipment to support my YouTube business. And I'm hoping that that YouTube business gets bigger and performs something else. It doesn't have to be exactly that. It could be a college degree. It could be some other field that you're saving up for, some other business that you want to get into. But I generally don't think it's a good idea to just be like, okay, minimum wage job, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. A year and a half, my brother, products. Thank you, Christian, for 18 months of support. On another note, what about iPhone Ultra having an M series of chip? Like, have them in iPads. Why not the phone? I think the power efficiency would be a lot worse. In iPads, it's not that big a deal because you have a pretty big battery in the iPad, but iPhone has a much smaller battery. But I'm not going to say never, because iPhone Ultra is getting pretty big and pretty thick, so maybe they could fit a bigger battery in it. And maybe if they start running Mac OS and they have Apple Dex or something where the phone can boot up into its a mini Mac or whatever, at that point, maybe it would start to make sense to put M-series chips. They probably get really hot, but maybe the M3 chip will run more efficiently. Maybe it'll be the binned, like, lower performing M3 chip. McDonald's actually has an automated drink pouring machine at my nearest location. Oh, yeah. See, that's what I'm telling you. It's like when you increase the cost of the worker, the motivation to automate increases a lot. So, like, the thought process of, I think it's just too basic. I think these are very complex issues that don't have one size fits all solutions, but people just oversimplify them and just say, oh, people aren't making enough. Pay them more. Problem solved. I don't know. It'd be like me going to a homeless person being like, just buy a house. You know, that would be rude and that would be senseless. So I would never do that. But I feel like that's kind of the same logic people are using. We'll just pay them more. It's like, okay, now think of it from the business's perspective. If the cost of operations go up, then they're going to just not have as many people. They're just not going to hire as many. There was a bill in California that didn't get passed, but almost got passed about Uber and Lyft. They wanted Uber and Lyft to treat all of their drivers as employees, which meant they had to give them medical benefits. And basically, Uber and Lyft came forward and said, we cannot afford to do that. We don't have the resources to do that. If this bill passes, we will shut down. Like, we will not offer jobs anymore. And that's why the vast majority of Uber and Lyft drivers voted against the bill, even though the bill was trying to help them, because it was like they ran polls on it. It was like 4 out of 5. They were like, I don't look at Uber and Lyft as a career position. I look at it as supplemental income. I look at it as in between jobs, or in between, you know, like when I have some free time, I just want to be able to make a little money on the side as like a side gig. And I like having that little option. I don't need there to be health benefits. It would be nice if there was, but it's that business model wasn't sustainable for Uber or Lyft. So the logic was, it was like, I would rather have a little money on the side than none at all, which is what's going to happen if this bill passes, where they say that if everybody that works for Uber and Lyft has to have health insurance, therefore there will be no Uber and Lyft. It's not a great solution. Well, we need our jobs to be better. Okay, now there's no jobs. Is that better? Yeah, it would be kind of a mess. Microphone. My best friend decided to stay at his minimum wage job because he works at some huge chain similar to McDonald's and realized he could make the same money and move to a cheaper state. He games the system. Well, if you can live with it comfortably, fine. But just, I think that those jobs are usually much easier to replace. So I would hope that if they are doing minimum wage, that they would at least put some money aside and save it or invest it. Live in a low cost of living area, like you said, which he's doing, and then you'll have some money prepared for if you get let go or if your job gets taken away by a robot. Let's see. If you don't subsidize small business and have no minimum wage laws, then you'll get a very unequal economy where people live with barely anything and the rich have it all. Much worse than what we have now. It's kind of hard to say. I don't think we have like a complete example of what it would be like, but I agree there would be problems. I don't know if it would necessarily be worse or better, but automation limits skills developed at a young age, potential long-term issues in one's career having not learned to develop basic skills. I don't think it's automation that limits it inherently, but it does change the skill set needed. You know, there used to be a lot of demand for number crunchers. Back in the old days, I remember my parents talking about people at grocery stores used to have to remember the prices of things. Price check on blah blah blah. They before barcodes, you just had to remember all that stuff. And you had to be really good at punching in the numbers. Now it's all barcodes. Now you don't have to remember anything practically. You just and there's self checkout too, so you can just bypass those people if you want to when it gets busy. I don't think you've ever in history we've never had success with trying to stop automation. Like, okay, here's some new engineering, here's some new technology that makes these jobs pointless. Oh, well then let's not automate, let's not engineer, let's not let technology progress so that these people keep their jobs, because then the job doesn't really bring value. It's just a job for the sake of being a job. It doesn't, so that job typically doesn't last very long if it's just there for the sake of. I remember my dad's example was always the pony whip factory. There was these factories that would make all the pony whips back when people had horse and buggies and horses and carriages and everything. You would whip the horse to get the carriage to go. Then the automobile came around and all the people in the pony whip factory were like, hey, what are we supposed to do? Where are our jobs going? So they were against the automobile. They didn't want cars to exist because that was going to take away their jobs. It's like, you could try to resist it a little bit, but it usually doesn't work. It doesn't last very long. Let's see. You spelled out the reasons why they don't put a charge limit in your phone when you listed the reasons you want one. How did I spell it out? When did I spell it out? I want to know what the reason is. Is the logic just that we want people to upgrade their phones more regularly? But I don't know. I don't like that logic. I mean, by that logic, Apple shouldn't provide the iPhone 10 iOS 16. Wealth inequality will always be around, but saying that we shouldn't try to limit it through any kind of policy is a ridiculous notion. I think that's one take on it. I don't say it's ridiculous. I don't think it's necessarily right. I don't understand why any human being needs $1 billion, but I think where the danger comes in is when we start letting a government entity dictate what is and isn't enough. That's when it gets a little dangerous. And right now there are billionaires, but most of them are way more heavily taxed than we are. They have legal ways to avoid paying a lot of their taxes. It's not against the law. It's not. The concept is that we don't tax, for the most part, we don't tax unrealized gains. And there's a big push to change that for billionaires, I guess. But I think it's kind of a slippery slope, because if you can tax unrealized gains, you can write off unrealized losses. So that can be used inversely. Again, I think it's important to look at all perspectives from multiple angles. I think there's too many people in that space. Man, I'm sorry. Are we talking politics? This is stupid. We shouldn't be doing it. I'm trying not to get political. I'm just trying to encourage people to be more critical thinking of, okay, the reason we have people with so many, like tens of billions of dollars, is because they store a lot of their wealth in stock. And we have systems in place that if you invest in the stock market and that stock performs well over time and you don't pull it out, you don't have to pay taxes on that because you haven't cashed out. So you don't own money, you own shares of a company, and the shares of that company are subject to change. So if we change the concept of, okay, now let's say Tesla stock does really well, and that's why Elon has $200 billion or whatever, but okay, what happens when Elon makes a stupid meme and tweets it or makes a joke and Tesla stock crashes, or Tesla does something dumb, or Elon says something stupid, the stock crashes? Well, if we're going to tax unrealized gains, then what's to stop unrealized loss? Which means he can write off that as a loss without selling the stock. And therefore, a lot of billionaires would pay less taxes than they are now based on the price of the stock at any given time. So they can... It gets messy really quickly when you get into the unrealized gains. And honestly, if you're capable of having an internet connection and you're capable of buying a $1,000 phone or a MacBook or something, the truth is you're already in a very, very high percentage of wealth globally. Vast majority of people on Earth have less than you do. If you're able to buy a device that can play this live stream. And I think that it's very dangerous to have a slippery slope where you can say, well, we decided this is too much. And now, okay, what's to stop it? Okay, this is too much. And you work your way down, before you know it, they're telling you that everybody has too much. Because there will pretty much always be someone with less than you. So it's a slippery slope argument that people are worried about. We eventually need a new income system, as most jobs will become fully automated and not require people to work. I don't know about that. I tend to disagree, because I think there's been a lot of automation in the past couple hundred years, but we've still found new jobs and new placements. Like, the great example was the ATM. People thought that the ATM would wipe out bank tellers when those first started coming out. The idea that you could walk up to an ATM and put in a card, plug in some money, and get cash out of it. People were like, oh no, that's going to take away all the bank teller jobs. Actually, there's more bank teller jobs now than before, because of how much money the bank saved on ATMs. They found new ways of, small business loans and mortgages, and they found other jobs for the bank tellers to do. But I think that more things will become automated, but there will still be tons of demand for other jobs that can't be automated. I don't think we're going to have a lacking of jobs. We'll probably just have a lacking of jobs people want to do. We already have that. There's already a lacking of jobs people want to do. Well, yeah, if you're getting an economics major, you're going to need to know how to debate people like me. AI automation will dilute a lot of good-paying white-collar jobs similar to offshoring manufacturing jobs during the 1970s and 80s. Right, but there's still tons of now hiring positions all over the place. There's a ton of places that can't get enough people working for them. There's just a lack of willingness, or lack of research, or lack of willing to apply at certain jobs, I think, that causes that. But yeah, jobs will be replaced, but so far we've replaced a lot of jobs, but we haven't run out of new ones. Elon would never say something stupid. Just ask him. Of course I want the iPhone 10 to get iOS 17. Of course. You have to be really successful to get to a point where you can do these weird loophole things to avoid certain taxes. It's not really weird loophole things, though. It's like anybody can do that. Anybody can invest in a SEP IRA and then write that off as their taxes. You don't have to be a rich billionaire to find that loophole. Anybody can do that. You think software devs will be wiped out? I think maybe more entry-level basic jobs that can be replaced by an AI, yeah, maybe. But that will just increase the demand for other jobs that AI can't do. All kinds of things that have been replaced, but we found new jobs to fill. Amazon paying $0 in income taxes. They could do that because they wrote off their losses. They have to get to a point where that was possible, and they had to pay a ton of other taxes, and people act like income tax is the only type of tax. No, that's true. There's sales tax, and think of all the sales tax that was generated by Amazon alone, just pumping the economy, getting a bunch of people to buy things they don't need. That's the government profited probably a lot off of that. I work for a sawmill, and we were always struggling to find people. See, that's what I think it is. It's like job demand displacement of like, well, we need a lot of people in construction right now, at least in my area. There's a ton of renovation and a lot of construction demand, but no one wants to do construction jobs. There's not a high demand for it. So the people that are doing construction are making a ton of money. I can find all the loopholes. I just can't use them. Yeah, I feel like people act like there's some secret loophole that opens up when you become a billionaire. Like the government goes, okay, here's how you avoid paying taxes now that you're rich. It's like, no, it's the same thing you guys can do. Anybody can do this. It's just that they get to bypass a lot more because they're controlling a lot more assets. But it's the same laws. They don't change it for the billionaires. It's easier to take advantage of them at that scale because you have so much of it. But do you think Apple would ever introduce their own internet service? I wish they would, but they probably won't because they have too many existing contracts with the carriers and stuff. There's Panda Expresses in select locations like YouTuber Caleb Hamer mentioned in Seattle they're hiring employees for $25 an hour. That's what I'm saying. It's supply and demand. If they can't find people to do it, the pay goes up. That's why you can find Panda Express $25 an hour. Let's see. I work for. We have given up raises to all our employees, almost $3 an hour increase at minimum wage. Yeah, because you need more people. That makes sense. I get it. Um, I don't think we're gonna have a. Basically, I think AI will replace a lot of things, but I don't think we're gonna run out of jobs. We haven't had that problem yet, even with all the automation. I think the problem is we're gonna have a lot of jobs people don't want to do. And that'll be the problem. And so we'll just have to keep increasing the pay of those jobs people don't want to do until the money's good enough that more people are doing it. So that's supply and demand. Yeah, welcome to Tailosive Finance, I guess. I think it's time for lunch for me, but yeah, it's a fascinating topic. I like looking at it from multiple angles if possible and seeing all the side effects. I'm not trying to say I have all the answers. There's all kinds of problems with not having rules on corporate profits, and I'm not honestly in favor of there being no regulation on income. Um, I've debated doing a whole series on Tailosive Life called "Why Drew Will Never Be President." There's a bunch of things like on one hand I'll be very libertarian and very conservative on certain subjects, and then I'll be super progressive, probably ultra liberal on others, and I'll be like, I don't think people should have access to this, and I think the government should stop the ability for us to have this and this and this. And I'll say all these things, and I tell them to my friends, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I know for a fact I could never become president because of my crazy ideas, but I like the debate. It's fun to have. I've just been passively listening to this throughout my classes. Well, that's fun. Robots will replace those jobs. Yeah, some of them, but there's going to be other jobs that can't be done. Have you heard of NFTs? Yeah, I know. The McDonald's near me is constantly putting up the please, for hire. They're increasing their payment. I forget what it is, but there are tons of restaurants looking for workers, and the solution, as the wage has to go higher, tends to become more of the, okay, we're just going to have less workers. Now we can make a McDonald's with 5 people instead of 10, and that's how you keep the prices reasonable or obtainable. Robotics for us will replace a lot of jobs that are always turning over. Well, they already have in many ways, but again, there's not a lack of jobs still. There's going to be some things I think that robots aren't that good at. Cleaning, I think, is one of them. Security being another. It is a very complex topic, but I think that it's important to know how to look at it from multiple angles, I guess. Crazy people are the ones who do change the world. That's true. And Elon is crazy in good ways and bad. Let's see. A Jack in the Box in my hometown had 2 people manning it. Crazy, but possible. That is pretty crazy. I think I saw that too not too long ago. I went to a restaurant a couple weeks ago, and there was one person taking the orders and cooking the food. And they said that they just couldn't get enough people to hire them. So it's like, yeah, I think robotics will fill a lot of jobs. I don't know if I agree with the whole they'll replace jobs. It's like there's a huge demand for a ton of positions that just people aren't applying for. And it's not like there's people not working, they're just not applying. They don't like that job. They want something better that pays more or whatever. So I think robotics and AI will probably fill in a lot of jobs that people are not currently occupying, which doesn't really take jobs. They just allow for productivity of businesses to get better, which is always what automation's been about from the beginning. My McDonald's has a song that says employees won't monitor the front counter. That's great. No, I'm not a Nintendo person. I'm not a game person. Ever since the Chicago School of Economics became so pervasive, it hasn't been intentionally complicated by needless jargon. I have no idea what all the needless jargon is, but it's interesting. And I don't think there's a good solution personally. I think there's just inherent human flaws, and there will always be problems like this. I don't claim to have the solutions. I just think that anyone who claims to have all the solutions hasn't thought it through. I guess that's my logic. But I appreciate the super chats and you guys watching. Got some more videos in the works. So thank you all for tuning in. And I had to make a list because I was having a hard time remembering them all. But I want to give a special shout out to all the crazy people that are Tailosive Tech Ultra members, even though they may not all be here. But Tyler Forte, Riley McGinnis, Bobby Forsey, Chris, just Chris, and Hasael. Thank you all for your extremely generous additional support. That was far too kind of you. Puroski says, once you have a robot doing something, you also need a person who maintains it. If job replaced, job created. Usually you could have one person maintain like 10 bots, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have an excellent rest of your day. Bye-bye.